Hey, if you're new to my channel, then consider liking and subscribing. It would really mean a lot to me, and honestly, it'd make my day. If you already did, thank you so much. Oh, and by the way, if you like listening to fan fiction, check out my other channel. The link's in the description. Deadly Drinking Pirate by Darren. Ace was wondering about that sake he stole from those pirates before allowing his little brother Luffy drink it when they became brothers. And now, Luffy has gained a new ability, one that defies the laws of devil fruits and yet makes him even stronger than before. Watch this drunk-proof pirate become the king of them all. Mature Luffy dual devil fruit Luffy harem.
Why? Shanks says it is good. A short boy about 7 years old with short, messy black hair whined from within a bar. And it will make everything all better, and I get to prove to Shanks that I am tough twice. He was wearing short blue shorts, sandals and a white that had the word, anchor, that had the image of an anchor placed in the very center. No, Luffy. It is bad for someone your age, and you could just get drunk and get yourself killed like you tried at the pier. The boy, whose name was Monkey D. Luffy, was refused of what he wanted by the bartender. Makino was a young woman with brown eyes and black hair that goes up to just above her shoulders. She wore a yellow kerchief, an orange blouse with black sleeves and a long light blue skirt and orange sneakers with white soles. And that was stupid too. You didn't need to stab yourself to prove you are tough. It just shows that you can be cut, and that is not very tough. Makino went on, and Luffy decided to ignore her and go to someone else who was at the bar. It was a man who was wearing a long black cape over his shoulders and wore a straw hat, which was synonymous with his image. He wore slightly loose brown trousers cut below the knee and collected halfway up the shin, with golden buttons down the outer leg. He wears a pair of sandals and is unshaven with a short, scruffy beard. Hi Shanks. Can I drink some of that sake? I want you to bring me on a pirate adventure someday. You did say that you were going to leave soon and be gone for good. Luffy may be naive, but he has proven to be somewhat mature at the same time. Shanks has worn a white shirt which is only half buttoned, leaving part of his chest exposed. A large red sash is tied around his waist and holds his sword on the right side. His shirt is tucked under the sash. The most striking thing about Shanks is the color of his red hair. He also has 3 scars across his left eye. Nice try, Luffy, but I agree with Makino that you only proved to be desperate and stupid enough to stab yourself like that. Besides, we are sailing the sea and we can't save you when you fall overboard. You sink like an anchor every time, anchor. Shanks retorted and got back to his meal, but not before causing the pirates inside the bar to laugh their heads off. Hey you jerks. Cut that out. Luffy yelled at them, but instead the pirates laughed even harder. Come on Luffy. Lighten up and you will actually appreciate it in the future. Luffy turned to see a tall man, standing at least a foot taller than Shanks. His hair was jet black and pulled back in a ponytail. Luffy knew him to never be seen without his rifle nearby or a cigarette in his mouth. He also now has a large, X-shaped scar on his left temple. He wears a black, V-neck shirt with 3/4 sleeves along with loose pants with numerous pockets on them, tucked inside his buckled boots. Like most of the other red hair pirates, he wears a sash around his waist, to which he attaches his rifle in a pistol-like fashion. The only thing added to his attire is his spiral pattern cloak. He was Ben Beckman, the first mate of the R3 red-haired pirates with Shanks as the captain. He is just looking after you. A pirate's life is dangerous. Looking after for sea monsters and other dangerous pirates is really all there is to it being a pirate. I just can't believe that having tomato hair is the key to having a crew stink up for you and having a pretty woman too. Luffy said while vaguely knowing on what he was talking about. He is still a 7-year-old and his mind was too underripe to understand all this. Still, the reaction that Luffy wanted did come. The pirates stopped and laughed the hardest since Shanks made fun of Luffy. But Shanks was not laughing and was like a teapot over boiling. "Who has tomato hair, you brat." It was ironic. Shanks was a famous and powerful pirate that was under the nickname red-haired, but he still was sensitive about his hair color. And for the last time, there is nothing between us and Makino. You stop that giggling. Shanks ranted and even yelled into the direction of the amused bartender, judging on how she didn't stop her giggling. Anchor does have a good point there, Captain. One of them added his own 2 cents to the gig that he found funny. His hair was styled in loose waves. In addition to that, earlier on, his body was slimmer while in his latest appearance. Oh, his headband was the name, Usopp, to be written. Finally, he wore a dark blue shirt, dark green pants reaching down to his calves and blue shoes with buckles on them. He was Usopp, the sniper for the red-haired pirates. You do have tomato hair, Captain. This one stood out the most since he has a round body shape and he is always seen eating a rack of meat. He is shown wearing goggles over his eyes at all times. He wears a red t-shirt with white vertical stripes on it, paired by a matching bandana on his head, short white pants with a red sash around his waist, and red shoes with fur around the ankles. He has a yellow coat draped over his shoulders like a cape, with a fur-lined collar and red epaulettes with black stripes on them. He was Lucky Roo, a very round but still a pirate worthy of being on Shanks' pirate crew. Usopp, Roo, you traitors, Shanks shouted with his embarrassment tripled with everyone laughing at his expense and how a 7-year-old boy had turned the tables rather easily. Luffy's humiliation was no different than tripping and nearly falling over compared to Shanks. Hey, but all that was brought to an end when the doors were opened with such force, they nearly broke the wall behind them. In the doorway were mountain bandits, criminals who think that because they don't sail means that they don't lose to sailors. The bandits all looked the same but not to their leader. He was a tall, dark-skinned man with black hair, a black goatee, and an X-shaped scar above his right eye. He wore a long purple coat over a white shirt, black trousers, and a golden necklace. Luffy didn't like the looks of him or how things came crashing down from fun and carefree to serious and foreboding. This place better have good sake because I am hungry for it and you all know better than to displease mountain bandits. That bandit leader called himself Higuma, the bear, worth 8 million berry, which was supposed to scare everyone in the bar. Seeing that the red-haired pirates were not, Higuma took what little sake was left and smashed the bottle onto Shanks' head. I want more sake by the time I come back and I will have to burn this village down if we don't. Remember that, you 2-bit pirates. Scared to fight back, Luffy was trying to keep in his anger while eating some kind of weird fruit he picked out of a treasure chest he thought was something worth eating. It still tasted terrible. But instead he got angry enough to punch air but instead his arm extended to punch Higuma into the wall and through a warehouse directly across the street from the bar entrance. The pirates spat out what they were drinking and coughed out what they eating at the shock of a 7-year-old boy's arm stretching as if it was suddenly made of rubber. They started to panic and hurried to the same chest that Luffy had found the strange fruit only to find out something even stranger. You idiot! You ate the treasure that was going to give us big cash. That was the gum fruit. The fruit that takes away your ability to swim for the power to stretch like a rubber band. That is good, right? I was never able to swim anyways and now I have something that is worth your time, Luffy said until Shanks got a little angry enough to pull on Luffy's now rubbery checks, making it nearly impossible for him to talk clearly. That is not the point. I thought that you were smart and you just had to eat the devil fruit. The accursed fruit. Shanks then felt like someone was tapping on his shoulder to get his attention and halt his ranting. Succeeding, Shanks turned to see something that made him forget about yelling at Luffy. I think there is more to this gum fruit we stole from Bottle of Fruit. Lucky Roo was holding the fruit in his hand while the bite Luffy made was clear. It is the rule that when a devil fruit is eaten, even a nibble is chipped off, the fruit becomes no different than last week's compost. But not this time. Can you still train me? Luffy said in an innocent tone that still got everyone's attention. I need to be strong enough so that I may not sail with you but sail with my own crew. Please, I need to know how to sail and how to fight. The only family I have left just throws me to the wolves and hyenas of the jungle on this island. Luffy finished his statements and then bowed, as if he was going to sell his pride and dignity for what he wants. Shanks just sighed. Luffy, I have a big headache as it is. He thought that will cause something to happen but instead silence reigned so strong that even a cricket on the far end of the island could be heard from the bar. Fine. You win. Shanks felt like a wrecking ball toppled him down, which was Luffy in his 7-year-old excitement. Here I am trying to get this kid to get off my case, get off my back and get off of me. But instead I am going to see that our favorite 7-year-old is going to make all this trouble today worth it. For the next generation. XXXXX several months later, I am not sure about this ace. A boy about 3 years older than Luffy said. He had a missing tooth and short curly blonde hair. He wore a large black top hat with a pair of blue goggles wrapped around it, a blue jacket with the sleeves rolled up, a cravat and a pair of light blue cyan shorts held up by a belt with an elaborate flower design buckle. Finally, he was seen with a gentle outfit with a white-colored short-sleeved shirt and wearing blue-colored shorts as usual. He was Sabo, a boy who made his life stealing from pirates and any other outlaws to gain his own dough and livings. Are you positive that this will be safe? Besides him was a boy about Sabo's age. He looked remarkably like Luffy. However, he was more serious-looking than Luffy's light-hearted design, and was also taller and more muscular. He also sported rather childish freckles, inherited from his mother, and tended to make a skeptical facial expression by raising his left eyebrow. He was wearing clothes about the same size as Luffy but with an orange shirt and yellow pants. He even had a band-aid on his forehead. I may not know what this bottle says, but since Darren won't let me, I needed to get some sake for this occasion. Ace said, and he uncorked the bottle to fill up 3 wine glasses, for himself, for Sabo and for Luffy, who was sitting on the other side of the crate that was being used for a table. He had changed a lot ever since he started to train under Shanks. It took a lot of whining and begging to convince Shanks to stay and to convince his grandfather, who was with the Marines, to allow Shanks to train him into becoming a skilled sailor. So far, it was successful, and Luffy may have to endure such harsh and unorthodox training in order to be as strong as the king of a jungle, but Shanks keep him from gaining the mind of a helpless and clueless monkey. Not only is he as strong as the average Marine despite being only almost 8, he was also good with a sword from Shanks, good with a pistol from Usopp, good with strategy and his wits, and also good with his feet like Lucky Roo. Who knew that even someone that sticks out like a sore thumb could move around fast enough to not be noticed? That was how Lucky Roo was such a dangerous pirate. He could move faster the more he eats and fills his belly. Luffy never found out how, and that is because the last time he tried to ask, he was run into the ground and shot down as if wild prey. Lucky for him, Luffy is immune to bullets due to his devil fruit power. And speaking of which, even though the pirates had barely any devil fruit users in their crew, they were able to train Luffy to bring out the best of his new powers. With his strength, Luffy could punch as if bullets from a gun or any other heavy and fast-moving projectile. He could even punch tunnels through mountains with his fist alone, but with his devil fruit power, he could do it all in one single attack. But with 10 years to wait until he could leave the island, even Luffy has goosebumps on just how strong he really be in that much time. Back to the present, Luffy was actually eager about this. So we are going to use sake for this. To become brothers? Let's do it. Luffy was not only urging to finally enjoy what Shanks and the other pirates never stopped drinking, but also this was his chance to finally have some good company for family. He was getting tired of fearing his grandfather when he arrived to visit him. During the months of special training, Luffy had seen just how strong Ace is when that older boy was able to tumble with a river filled with crocodiles for their skins. Ace initially rejected Luffy, but that boy with the sword won't give up. Eventually, Ace started to demand to know why Luffy never gave up on him like everyone else. To his shock, he learned that Luffy only wanted a friend and wanted Ace to be the one because Luffy was as lonely in the mountains as Ace was. That was to be the start of the crack that broke apart Ace's shell. The more time that Ace found himself hanging out with Luffy had surprised him himself, and pretty soon, Ace allowed Luffy to come with him wherever he goes from the mountain. That was how Luffy met Sabo, a fellow orphan who was living in the slums as well and was great friends with Ace. They steal together, they scheme together, and they even fight together. They were hoping to steal enough money to leave the island. Luffy offered to help out, and pretty soon, the two older boys found themselves an adorable and eager younger brother. Now they are going to fully tie the knot and become brothers over cups of sake. And that is what they did, and with the sip of the cup filled with sake, Luffy felt something that he never thought he will again. It was like the sake went bad and turned to ash or something in Luffy's mouth. It tasted horrible, but it was also familiar. Ugh! Luffy had to finally vomit once he pieced things together. It was the same disgusting taste of that devil fruit that he ate at the bar. But why would the sake taste a lot like that? Luffy then turned to see a shocking sight. His brothers as well as pack of wolves from the jungle were walking around drunk. The boys perhaps impossible, but the wolves never got even smelling range of the bottle of sake, so how did they get drunk? After some time, the drunken company of Luffy had passed out when they were so high. Their spirits threatened to leave their bodies and rise to heaven. Luffy just knocked out the wolves and skinned them. a skill that Ace and Sabo taught him. The whole time he had been trying to make sense of what happened. Then he started to panic and take out a miniature treasure, and when Luffy opened it, it revealed to be a mush of spoiled and rotten fruit matter. Could it be that devil fruit I ate was the gum fruit but also mutated and had a side effect? A side effect that the sake entering my mouth had triggered it? Just how did this happen? Luffy was still 7 years old and he wished he was capable of understanding all this so it will stop the headache that was killing him. The answer that Luffy will be searching for may be the strangest thing that Luffy or anyone else in the world could call strange and crazy. But it can't be found in this sea, that is for sure, and Luffy spent no longer than a whole hour figuring that one out. All the black-haired boy could do is be patient and train so that he could find the answer in that ocean in the world. It is in that ocean, I know it is. XXXXX, and so 10 years had passed and Luffy's brothers had already left for the sea, so now it was his turn. It was a very beautiful day on the pier of Fuchsia village. The entire village was there, including the village elder. He had a cleft chin, wears oval glasses, and has a mustache and a beard, turning grayish-white. He wears simple clothages with his appearance, but they are similar to each other. He currently wields a walking cane from old age. He was also the mayor, whoop slap. I can't believe that you are leaving us to be a pirate, Luffy. Don't you know what it will do to our village? He never appreciated Luffy's dream, but the boy never had a good reason to listen to him. His word was never good advice. I told you, Mayor. You can't stop people's dreams. You will be known as the Heartbreaker Mayor if you keep this up. Luffy irritates the mayor every time by being smart enough to retort much sharper and always win an argument. Besides, the Marines don't care where pirates come from. It is a waste of their time to capture us, and besides, if our village does get known as a pirate breeding ground, then the world government will try to hide it. I have seen their ways to save face in the eyes of the entire world. Fine, go. Follow your dream to the very ends of the world for all I care. Whoop shouted with his infamous outbursts. Makino just giggled and calmed him down. As she did, the sun began to shine from beyond the clouds and cast a better light on this new and improved Luffy. Despite having a scrawny figure, his body was ripping with muscle. He was wearing short, blue trousers with cuffs, sandals, and a sleeveless red vest. Luffy still has that scar with 2 stitches underneath his left eye and short, messy black hair. On his waist, with a yellow sash tied around his waist, were a pair of swords. A katana and a rapier, both were sturdy looking and still exquisite. He has grown taller and nearly above the average person's height for his age at 17 due to his training. All this can be seen in his clothes as well as his slightly thicker neck, more pronounced deltoids, and better defined chest. Finally, on top his head and hiding most of his black hair that had grown halfway past his back, was a straw hat with a red cloth rimming. It looked worn, like it was used multiple times for years. Can't believe that Shanks had given up his greatest treasure to me before he left days ago. He told me that my training is over with him, but I am not powerful enough for the new world, and the only way to be prepared is to overcome Paradise. I need to be strong enough to make Paradise look that way compared to the new world. Luffy was heavy in thought as he drifted the straw hat over his eyes, covering them with shadow from everyone's sight. No one spoke a word the entire time. They then watched on Luffy rowing away from the pier, but not before the sea giving away like dirt to a surfacing mole. Out came the Lord of the Coast, a local sea monster that had made the island unreached to normal pirates. His appearance is similar to a large oversized brown eel with red eyes and blue fins. Hello, Lord of the Coast. I hope you are not hungry, because I am not going to be your next meal unlike 10 years ago with Higuma. Luffy said with a calm tone, but the sea eel tried anyway but was wondering why he suddenly see the same boat and same human multiple times. No matter which one he tries to attack, all he meets is the water that splashes rather hard at that speed. I told you, and because you are a sea monster, you don't belong in the East Blue. You deserve to live with the real monsters in the world's greatest ocean. Come with me and you will no longer be hated and forgotten by all. They will fear you instead, and that is what you live for, isn't it? Luffy started to say, and the sea eel was wondering why his V-zone was cleared up and he could think straight again. Looking into the eyes of Luffy made the sea beast give in. Those eyes were like that of a king or a conqueror. He just sat there in the waves while Luffy attached some ropes in the shape of a horse's leash. From now on, you will be my stead and you need a name. A name that will show of everything you can give to everyone who sees you from the depths of the ocean. Luffy started to think hard on what will be good until he smirked, Umi Tente. The sea creature didn't know what to think based on human language but still liked the sounded and nodded. Well then my Umi Tente, we will show the world what we can do. We are going to be the strongest there ever is. We are going to rock the earth so hard it will shake the heavens. Luffy raised his fist into the air and Umi Tente, or Umi for short, roared into the air following his new master's voice. That was to be the start of something that the world had never seen indeed. End of chapter 1. After a couple of days of just drifting, in case they stumble onto something on the sea, Luffy was actually starting to feel a little bored. It was nothing but the white clouds too far to reach and the blue sea that stretched like a never-ending blanket. I just wish something will blow up because it will startle me. That is proof that things are too peaceful. Luffy muttered in annoyance and then got his wish even though he didn't see the wishing start in the day sky. Something did blow up and it was so strong that it rocked the ocean surface, with Luffy's boat shaking violently, and it was so loud that it nearly killed off the fish nearby. The ones not so lucky had littered the ocean around the area. Let's check it out, Umi, Luffy said while getting the attention of his startled seastead. Nodding, Umi took off with Luffy and his boat towards the source of the noise. Meanwhile, at the very site, there was a battle. Two ships, one with a flag of the skull and crossbones, were shooting cannons and launching sailors at each other. It was between a pirate ship and their next target for plunder. The strangest thing was that the ships were still floating and not even lowering an inch in all the cannon fire. It was like the cannons were only doing as much as getting the wooden hull dusty and dirty. But that makes some sense since if one ship goes down and the other is too damaged to be used again, it won't matter any difference to who will win. It looks like they are trying to avoid getting sunk and getting the other ship to sink. Looks like a battle alright, but if we are going to the Grand Line, we will need a much bigger ship than this rowboat, Luffy said while trying to figure out which ship to spare and which one to salvage for himself. Oh what the heck, stand back Umi, Luffy said getting his sword out of its scabbard which confused the eel-like Sea King but it moved back anyways. And it was glad that it did because when Luffy swung his sword, the sea exploded in a violent wave that shook both of the ships and in a closer look, the crew were shocked as well. Or that, they all had weak hearts since they fell hard to the decks and were all knocked out. All done, come on Umi. I need to refashion this eyesore into something that really screams, pirate ship. Umi nodded and helped Luffy get aboard the pirate ship while agreeing that staring at it too long can ruin one's eyes indeed. XXXXX. If you wanted a battle between Luffy and Alvida then you will have to look it up because it will be no different. Here we are. A young boy that was named Kobe heard Luffy shouting, Seashell Island and the closest marine base from miles around. Luffy said before turning to Kobe as the former cabin boy emerged from within the boat like a bear from winter hibernation. This is where you will start your life as a marine. Kobe smiled at that. Here is a pirate that didn't kill him and now was going to make him a marine even if it killed him. Thanks Luffy-san. I just hope they will let me in. Kobe was still the wuss from living in fear for 2 solid years as a reluctant cabin boy on a cruel pirate ship. Kobe, you can do chores and you actually sail a ship. That is all they ask for someone who wants to be a marine. Luffy said to try and comfort him. I tell you, being raised by mountain bandits and trained to be a jungle animal was not going to make me a marine. That is why I am going to be a pirate instead. I just like my freedom too much, Luffy said in a nostalgic tone. Kobe had heard it before but still found it hard to believe. As for the ship they were sailing to Seashell Town, it was actually the pirate ship Luffy had stolen from another group of pirates that were called the Alvida Pirates after their former captain. Since it was hideously pink, Luffy had to repaint it with some black and blue paint that he happened to have on the rowboat he took from his hometown. No one was going to use them in Fuchsia Village anyways, and as luck will have it for Luffy, the paint were in his favorite colors. After the new paint job, even Kobe agreed that it looked more like a pirate ship. Except for one thing to also notice. I still can't believe that not only did you ruin my ship but you also rebuilt it while still on the sea. Both Luffy and Kobe turned to see someone that they knew but was still a different woman altogether. She was Alvida herself. Originally, Alvida was a tall and very obese woman with long wavy black hair and freckles on her cheeks. But now she was as slim as most women of her age. She is wearing a white cowgirl hat with a large red plume, a red neckerchief, a pink plaid shirt, and a blue captain's coat over it with the arms in the sleeves unlike many other pirates. She wore rings on her fingers and her long sharp fingernails had red polish. She had a purple sash with a flintlock pistol tucked in it and some jewels. She also wore graying pants and red shoes with gold buckles. She still has her cowboy hat, but she now dresses in a pearl necklace, a bikini top, and tight capri-length pants. She sometimes has a purple coat draped over her shoulders. She still wears lipstick, polish on her now shorter fingernails, and her toenails are shown painted as well. Well, since your former ship had a regular style helm and bottom, it was easily to work my way up. I happened to have a lot of talents when I trained to be a sailor, Alvida. Luffy said casually, like it was no big deal at all. But Kobe and Alvida have to say otherwise. And don't forget that I am the only one that is keeping you from wasting that pretty face and body in jail, Alvida. I am not a pirate yet, so Marines have no reason to throw me in jail with you. Luffy then said in rebut while not noticing the blush on Alvida's face. You're right, Captain. I am sorry, Alvida said back, in a timid tone like that of a shy schoolgirl. I am still glad that you actually helped me even though I tried to kill you. Alvida then brought up. That sub no mi of yours is still the best thing that ever happened to me. It was true. Luffy did agree that if Alvida dreamed of being the world's most beautiful woman, then she will need a complete and total makeover and a new look. Taking out an oversized pomegranate that was blue instead of the usual dark red, complete with curls and swigs on the surface. 1. He forced Alvida to eat it while she was bound in her own rope. The next thing she knew, she felt a lot lighter and the ropes fell as if she suddenly shrank. Instead, her excessive body fat had disappeared in an instant. She was shocked and wondered what happened until she tried to balance herself by leaning on one of the ship's wooden walls and instead slipped and fell. It was like she was trying to stable herself on solid ice. Luffy explained that he had uncovered this fruit while hunting in the jungles around his village and kept it because he had already ate one at the time and there was no one to buy the fruit for a good amount of money. So he kept the fruit from being stolen until he could find someone to at least tell him what fruit it was. And just like that, he had somehow uncovered a book on the current recorded fruits and it called the one Luffy found as the sub no mi or the slip fruit, which allows the user to be untouchable by removing any friction on the skin to the point that anything unnecessary like body fat will not hold on at all. Alvida thanked Luffy for giving her a large step towards her dream of being the world's most beautiful and powerful woman. It is no trouble. Luffy can be aware or not about just how much respect Alvida has in for him. Now remember, Alvida, speak nothing and don't bring your weapon. It will be the first thing to give you away and I don't want Kobe to blow his chance at being a Marine before he even got started. You don't want me to actually ruin your new face, right? Like an actual captain. Luffy was brief and straight to the point with a bit of edge to his tone that got Alvida to nod so fast, her head could have fallen off. Then let's go. XXXXX Seashell Town was your ordinary town. Can't. Just the regular things. Stores open to customers, children running in the streets, parents talking with their friend while keeping an eye on their kids. All the usual stuff. I'm not sure about this, Kobe. Are you sure this is where the marine base holding the pirate hunter, Roronoa Zoro, is? But before anyone could speak, everyone jumped away from Luffy and his company and tried to paste themselves on the walls they were leaning on. Perhaps you should refrain from speaking the pirate hunter around here. Kobe whispered into Luffy's ear and the raven-haired boy nodded. But then, I am pretty sure since the captain of the base is, Axe Hand, Morgan. And just like that, everyone jumped from the gang in the same manner as when Luffy mentioned Zoro. Kobe was confused. What? Doesn't sound like this captain is very well loved by the people. I have a hard time deciding which one is the real danger to this town. Luffy responded, which got Kobe off the wrong block. That is impossible. Marines are never to be feared. They are not bad guys. OFMPH, Kobe shouted until Luffy suddenly stopped in front of the boy, causing Kobe to crash into him. Kobe, I want to be a pirate, Luffy said while not facing Kobe. Does that automatically make me a bad guy? Kobe didn't know what to say, at least without stuttering. The world isn't black or white. There is gray areas of corruption or misunderstanding, Luffy said in sage-like tone. There are bad Marines who are more concerned about their egos, money, or their power, while there are good pirates who sail for freedom and the joy of adventure without any higher-ups telling what to do from their high chairs. I want to have all the freedom that the sea can give me, and if I wasn't a pirate, it will be 10 times harder to achieve my dream. To be the Pirate King? Kobe said, but Luffy shook his head. No, my true dream. One that you will figure for yourself. Luffy answered in an encrypted tone before continuing on his way through town, following the site of a high tower to the marine base. It didn't take very long to make it there, and Luffy had one thing to say. This place is the ugliest base I ever seen. It just screams of inflated ego. But while Alvida stayed near Luffy for personal fear of being recognized and captured by Marines, Kobe ignored the Raven Boy and was shaking as if he was exposed on a winter day. This is it. What I have always SD dreamed of. His voice was pieces and all over the place. Well, anyway, we need to find out where Zoro is and see if he will join us, Kobe. Luffy said, and that got Kobe's attention. Good luck, because if first no marine bases, any criminal will be placed inside the base so that he can't escape and hurt others, Kobe said, but wasn't the one to be taken seriously since had this dreamily look on his face. Like talking about all the things he loved about his idols. But oh yeah? There is someone in the courtyard for sure. Come on and let's get a better look. Luffy said and pulled Kobe up the wall with his extending arm, something that Kobe and Alvida has yet to get used to. Inside the courtyard, on a wooden cross, was indeed a man. He was like he was rugged to the ground and hadn't had a good meal and good night's sleep. His breath was ragged and sharp despite barely even moving from those rope binding that kept his arms and torso to the cross. His attire was something to consider. He wore a dirty white and open shirt with black trousers tucked inside black boots, and a green haramaki. His eyes were covered by a black bandana which was as dirty and sweaty as himself and still made him look menacing, like a tiger waiting to pounce or a demon ready for the kill. Luffy was not too startled, but Kobe sure was scared, enough to fall all the way down the wall and ignore the pain in his panic. That's him. That black bandana and green haramaki. It is Roronoa Zoro, the pirate hunter. Okay then, Kobe, you watch over Alvida while I talk to him, Luffy said, but before he could even lift himself up over the wall, a ladder was placed next to him, from the opposite side as Kobe. Who climbed the ladder was a little girl who seemed to be local in the town. She reached the top of the ladder and signaled for Luffy to be quiet. Luffy wanted to see what this brave little girl was going to do if she was going to sneak into a marine base. She walked over to Zoro, who finally moved his head to the sound of footsteps in his direction. You? Why the hell are you here? They will kill you. That wasn't what a demon usually says, especially when they are bound and on the verge of death. I bet you are starving, so I made something for you, the girl said in a cheerful tone, as if she was ignoring Zoro. I worked hard on these onigiri, rice balls, and I thought that you should eat them. I said beat it, Zoro said instead, only to hear a set of 3 footsteps coming towards him in another direction entirely. Now Zoro. That is no way to treat little girls. A voice that could only be related to Parrot with a throat pain, complaining about no food. It hurt their ears from the very first word. And what they all saw didn't help. It was a skinny and lanky looking young man with light blonde hair shaped like a sideways oval on top of his head. He also has a cleft chin. He wore violet-colored uniforms with white shoes and a rubber band ring on his left hand. Just what is that, Captain? Alvida, apparently, didn't want to be left out of the action and managed to climb up the wall with her much lighter body. She whispered her confusion and disgust to Luffy, who only nodded. Since there are Marines near him like bodyguards, no doubt that he is related to the man in charge enough to be like a prince on this island. Luffy said with an edgy tone. I seen this before. Truly I hate most royalty figures and family members. And pretty much those who even as much as act like it. Now that was new, and yet no one took notice. And why are you here, you little disobedient brat? That sure was ironic, coming from the same boy who scolded Zoro on not treating children right. Are those onigiri? He pointed to the treat in the girl's hands and snatched it without even asking for one. Only to choke on it and expel it from his mouth in disgust. He then snatched the remaining rice ball and stomped it into the dirt and mud under his foot. This are too sweet, you need to use salt. Don't you even make good rice balls? I thought that sugar will make it taste better, and I worked hard on those. The girl started to cry, but the boy just won't budge and instead pointed to a sign right next to him. Too bad, and you shouldn't be here because according to Daddy's rules, anyone that is spotted with a criminal or helping them out in any way possible will be locked away as an accomplice, so you better scram before tell Daddy on you. He whined and acted once again like it wasn't his problem with a head up high. I take that back, he must be the son of the captain who is in charge of this pathetic marine base. Luffy whispered to his two friends who were watching the whole thing, and they all nodded. Now will you two idiots stop standing there, looking stupid, and get rid of this brat? The boy said, pointing to his two bodyguards. Yet they both hesitated. But Mr. Helmeppo, she is a little girl, and one of them stuttered until the boy, now named Helmeppo, grabbed him by the scuff of the collar. Are you really saying no to me, the son of Captain Axehand Morgan? I will tell Daddy on you, Helmeppo shouted, and one of the Marines hurried to grab the girl and throw her over the wall. Thankfully, Luffy and his friends were able to get out of sight, and Luffy was swift enough with his stretching abilities to catch the girl and save her from a nasty fall and an even worse landing. Take her into the town. I will catch up with you after this jerk leaves. Luffy told them, and both Kobe and Alvida nodded. Luffy did as he said and waited for Helmeppo to leave with his bodyguards, laughing at how Zoro promised food or water if the town will be spared and he will be allowed to leave safely. Zoro then took in a huge sign, probably from hearing that voice every single day, until he noticed a shadow in front of him. Who are you? You better leave before that idiot Captain Sun comes back. I am not worried about spoiled brats who need others to even go to the restroom. I am more interested in you, Roronoa Zoro. Luffy said, and Zoro smirked. It will seem that my reputation perceives me. Now that you know my name, how about yours? It's Monkey D. Luffy. I am going to sail to the Grand Line and achieve my dream, Luffy said with hesitating. Dream, huh? The Grand Line? You must have a death wish, wasting your time on a pointless dream, Zoro said with a smirk that seemed to be glued on his face until. And the same can be said about your dream, Zoro. You will never be the best in the world by staying here in the weakest of the seas. Seriously, greatest swordsman in the world. You will have a better chance at being the greatest decoration swordsman in this courtyard, Luffy said bluntly, and grinned when Zoro actually got a little shaken up. Shut up. That sure scared some birds in the distance, showing just how loud that yell was. I don't know how you found out about my dream, but this ropes won't keep me from killing forever. Cool it, Zoro. I am here because we both have dreams and I want to invite you on my pirate crew. Pirate crew? Sorry, but no, I will never stoop to be something as despicable as that. Zoro smirked again, but Luffy wasn't impressed. Fine then, I will you time to think of a real answer, but know this. I am not leaving without you, and as a pirate I will play dirty if I have to. And remember, you are in no position whatsoever to complain. See you later. Luffy turned after stating the circumstances until. Wait. Luffy turned to Zoro, who was looking at the ground near his feet for some reason. Can you get those rice balls, put them in my mouth? Luffy turned his focus to where Zoro is looking, with disgust. What rice balls? They're more like dirt balls. Are you sure about this? Luffy said, picking them up, but Zoro was stubborn. Never mind that and give them to me, Zoro said with his mouth wide open and inviting. Luffy shrugged and placed both dirty rice balls in Zoro's mouth, watching the bound man struggle to bite them down. I told you it was nothing but dirt. Are you trying to be a dirt mite? Zoro ignored him and instead said this. Great, tell that girl that it was the most delicious rice balls I ever ate. Luffy said nothing and just nodded. Later, inside the town, really? He liked them. The girl from before, named Rika, shouted in her childlike joy. Ate them to very crumb, Luffy said, while Kobe and Alvida were in awe at how Zoro ate the dirty rice balls, just to cheer this girl up. So this Zoro guy isn't a criminal. Kobe still wasn't sure what to think of finally seeing how Marines handle the general population. It was nothing like what he had been dreaming of for 2 years as a cabin boy and a slave. No, he is not, Rika shouted. He is only in trouble with the Marines because of me. Rika then explained that Helmeppo once set loose a rabid dog he owned into the town that terrorized the townspeople and even tried to attack Rika, but Zoro had stopped the dog by killing it. Helmeppo took it as a sign of defilation, so he threatened to lock up Zoro until he promised to leave everyone alone and let him go after a month with no food or water. Hey, your heads are too high, bow lower, lower or I will tell Daddy on you. There was that same voice from the courtyard, and speak to the devil, it was Helmeppo himself. He seemed to want to walk to somewhere with everyone bowing to him like a prince. Oh, I can't wait to kill off that Zoro in 3 days, it will be fun. Luffy had initially wanted to ignore Helmeppo, but that last sentence just caused something to snap inside. Hey, you said that you will let him go when the month is over, you promised. What? Helmeppo turned to Luffy with indifference like an ignorant parrot. That promise was just a joke. I only said it so he will cooperate. He is such a stupid beast to believe someone like me to begin with. It will be good riddance. Helmeppo taunted Luffy about with a puffed up face until Luffy finally couldn't take it anymore and fiercely punched Helmeppo in the face. Oh, you hit me, Helmeppo whined while Kobe held Luffy back. No one, not even Daddy, ever hit me. I am Captain Morgan's beloved son. I will tell Daddy on you. Helmeppo was wondering why his usual attitude wasn't working on Luffy and tried to threaten the raven-haired boy. Then you better call him and kill me in front of his eyes for all I care. You're way too old to go to your stupid father for something as stupid as this. Luffy wasn't deterred at all. He had seen scarier things than the threats from a spoiled boy. After seeing the two Marines take Helmeppo away, he shook Kobe off easily and adjusted his hat that fell off his head when he struck at the captain's son. He is not even worth hitting. That is why he has never been hit in his life. While everyone was in deep shock at what was going on, Rika walked up to Luffy and had the eyes of a child who had seen her idol in action. Thanks, big brother, I feel a lot better now. It sure did when Rika saw the one who wasted her hard work and had the nerve to insult it right in front of her eyes. Luffy just chuckled while ruffling up Rika's hair like a little sister of his. Rika, you know you shouldn't be involved in things like this. We will get killed. A woman who looked like an adult version of Rika came and took the little girl from Luffy while Rika was protesting until Luffy assured her that things will be fine with a thumbs up. Once Rika was in her house with her mom, Luffy lost his smile and faced Kobe with a glare to prevent anything the latter was going to say. Try and stop me, Kobe, but I have made up my mind. I am going to leave this town, with Zoro on my crew. Not waiting for a response, Luffy charged towards the marine base again after telling Alvida to look after Rika and only intervene when things get out of hand. Once he had reached the wall and climbed over it, Zoro looked up to see Luffy again. If this is about joining your crew, then you will be disappointed. I have thought about it 3 times before you got back. I don't want to go. Zoro tried to make it clear even though his appearance was not to be taken seriously. Since Luffy isn't going to leave without Zoro, he had a plan for Zoro, unfortunately, for the latter. If you want to become the world's best swordsman, given that you are the pirate hunter and yet you don't kill pirates, you're trying to improve your skills even though you are feared throughout the East Blue. You're aiming for the top, but you can't do that without a sword. Luffy started and Zoro was growling at the former. Zoro, if I give you a sword, will you slice steel, slice iron, create blades of wind, cut an entire ship into half? No way in hell. Those are impossible. Zoro shouted in defilation, but Luffy wasn't impressed. Zoro, I am a swordsman myself, trained by a pirate from the Grand Line. He happened to be Dracul's old rival. I even know both of them greatly. If you want to be the top, then those things will be nothing to you. You can't achieve your dream staying here in the East Blue. Luffy said, and Zoro just didn't know what Luffy was talking about until. And tell you what, since you don't have your swords, they were stolen. I will get them back for you. What? But if you want them back, you will have to join my pirate crew. Luffy smirked and Zoro exploded. You little, stupid, blackmailing piece shit are really pissing me off. Zoro yelled like a trapped and cornered rat until Luffy gave a silent farewell before running towards the base directly. He is just going to die. Oh, how wrong Zoro will learn he is. Meanwhile, at the top of the tower at the marine base. Hurry it up. I want my statue to be where everyone can see MGHT or I will kill you, shouted a very tall and muscular, intimidating man with blonde hair and a steel jaw. His right hand is replaced by a huge steel axe, the handle of which seems to go right through his forearm. He is wearing a large, billowing coat like a cape. He is also smoking a cigar. Why yes, Captain Morgan. The poor Marines who are struggling to lift up a statue of their captain, proving of his abuse and huge ego. But someone was there and was talking to Morgan about something else. But Daddy, someone hit me and you said that you will kill anyone who does. Why aren't you doing it? Helmeppo was shouting at his father even though they barely had anything in common despite being father and son. Morgan had this to say though. "You want to know why I haven't hit you in all your life?" Morgan said with a sadist tone that scared Helmeppo. "Because I am your beloved son?" That was the wrong answer for sure, as he too was hit in a similar but weaker way than Luffy. "Because you are a son that is not even worth hitting," Morgan shouted before getting on his feet and towering over the quivering Helmeppo. "Why am I the one to fight your battles? You're old enough to do it yourself and not get my greatness involved. You're just a flea compared to the prize-winning canine I am." "Got it?" Morgan said, but before anyone could respond, someone beat them to it. "Except for that last one, I had to agree with you. Axe hand." A voice that Morgan didn't know but Helmeppo recognized had settled in the atmosphere out of nowhere. When everyone set their eyes on where the voice seemed to originate, on Morgan's statue. "Hey. What the hell do you think you are doing? You are a commoner who is going to rot my wonderful statue. Get off so I can kill you," Morgan shouted, but Luffy didn't budge. "This thing? Thanks for reminding me to do this." Luffy looked down on the waste of rock and stone and smashed it with his bare fist. Morgan was as pale as a ghost, seeing the rock image of himself crumble and fall to the ground. "Kill him, now." "Aye aye, Captain Morgan," the Marines saluted until. "Daddy, that is the one who hit me. If you would have killed him, none of this would have happened." Helmeppo shouted until he felt a little light-headed and found himself being carried by Luffy while upside down. "Sorry, but I need you for a moment," Luffy said before taking Helmeppo down the corridor via an open entrance to the main stairway. Meanwhile, a Marine pointed out someone trying to untie Zoro in the courtyard, which successfully derived Morgan's attention from Luffy kidnapping his son. And indeed, in the courtyard, Kobe with the help of Alvida was trying to untangle the ropes off of Zoro and free him. They told Zoro just what was going on and that the Marines were never going to spare Zoro at all. Just needed a reason to show off their achievement. And then their great power by killing an otherwise exhausted and starved pirate hunter. Back in the Marine base, Marines were dropping like flies to fly poison as Luffy tried to find where Helmeppo had placed the stolen swords of Zoro's. They were in a room that screamed more of a girl's tastes with all that egotistical and pink decor. But what Luffy found were a sword and a white scabbard, while two more in regular black ones. Luffy didn't have time to think when he saw the Marines aiming their guns on Zoro and his friends, so he took all of them, tied the swords to his waist and blocked the bullets by leaping out of a window. "You, Luffy. No, Straw Hat." They all reacted to Luffy taking in the Marine bullets, and yet Luffy didn't get riddled with holes like a piece of Swiss cheese. "It will take more than that to kill me." Luffy laughed at everyone's expressions. "Just who the hell are you?" Everyone shouted while ignoring the armless Marines and the pile of rifles at Luffy's feet. And neither did Luffy, who said proud and clear, "I am Monkey D. Luffy and my dream is to be the best pirate of them all. I am going to be the drunken pirate king." End of chapter 2. Several days later, there was peace among the waters. And that was just perfect for the man, leaning on the railings of his ship. He called it the King's Gourd based off himself, and after using so of the funds he literally pulled out of nowhere at a couple of ports for some more material to refashion the ship that originally belonged to the Alvida pirates before they were all turned in. With the exception of the captain, for some extra cash. It helped that both Luffy hadn't made a pirate flag yet and that Zoro was there too, keeping quiet about becoming a pirate. Everyone thought that the pirate hunter had finally allowed some help in his business. "Out here again, Captain. I thought this is where I will find you." An angelic voice had flowed with the wind and into Luffy's ears. The raven-haired pirate captain turned to see a sight that he will never get enough of. It was the second woman on his crew after Alvida, who had become the chef enforcer and female counterpart to Zoro as Luffy's first mate. She is a slim young woman of average height, with orange hair and light brown eyes. Many people consider her to be very attractive or even beautiful. She wore an orange mini skirt with two white rings on each side filled in with orange or brown in their centers, and shirts with short sleeves, and usually pairs her tops with skirts that have two rings on the sides. Her trademark shoes are orange high-heeled gladiator sandals. She also had short hair with a particularly curled strand over the left side of her face. "Right again, Nami-chan. I swear that the wind is a better friend to you than me," Luffy said with a grin, and Nami giggled. "I am sure, my captain man, the wind is my friend, but I can't speed with the wind." I will just catch a cold. Nami giggled along. Nami was a thief and the best navigator Luffy had ever seen since meeting the one from Shanks' crew years ago. She was also a woman who shown Luffy plenty of things about navigating, which included a good sense of direction, how to read maps and use a compass, and what to do in case of storms, since that is also essential to a sailing ship as its navigator. She even gave Luffy a few things before the pirate captain last saw her. He just hadn't told his crew about them yet. Luffy said it was because the timing isn't right yet. But back on topic, Nami was a great navigator since she impressed Luffy by luring 3 pirates from another crew into a storm that sank their boat while she stole their treasure. Nami said, after close encounters and impressions made by Luffy, that all the money was to buy a village for a reason that she never said. Luffy saw fear in Nami's eyes and her reluctant tone was enough to tell him he was about to push too far in his curiosity for Nami. But the real kicker was when Nami said that she was also interested in the captain, and after another adventure that involved an island of curious animals and its protector in a chest, she and Luffy really got intimately close. It was almost like they became a couple only after a few days, not that Zoro wanted to hear them talk so softly that it made his ears itch. If you do, then I will know and keep you warm until you are cured. And if I catch that cold, then I am counting on the world's best girl to keep me warm and company as well. Luffy said, and Nami giggled. It seemed to be love stuck flittering, but to Nami, it was still sweet enough to bear it. You have all the time in the world, Captain, but I want to know why we are going to some random island. And what is this about a second ship? Don't we have one already and we can just expand for more crew members? Alvida came from who knows where these days, and judging from the maps in her hand, both the map room and the captain's captain. We do, and we can always use another ship that is small enough to get to those inhabited island where there are no docks and rocks that can sink this ship instead. The Grand Line may have docks, piers and towns like here in the East Blue and any other sea, but one can never be too careful, not even in the world's greatest sea. Luffy said, and his crew just signed in content that they haven't won a conversation with their captain yet. Then again, they all agreed that Luffy is thinking about the crew, even more than the ship had worked hard on to renovate into something he finds more interesting and necessary. XXXXX. This has got to be it. Luffy said while overviewing the next destination, the one he was awaiting. He told me that the island will be on these coordinates. Luffy said, looking at a map he had fished out, and ordered the ship to head to where the island is pointing. Nami had to point out that someone sure had made the map to focus on just one island and was not a treasure map until Luffy reminded her that treasure has more than one meaning. It was an island all right when the band of pirates got there, and there were signs of a village, but there was no port in sight. It seemed that the native inhabitants were more inbound in terms of access to the sea. Unfortunately, it cuts off the town from any ocean shipping and makes it the perfect place for pirates to attack with surprise. That was no surprise that when Luffy and his crew had set anchor at the ramp which led up to island ground level. Halt! That was a meek voice, and yet it got the pirates' attention, and they saw a very curious sight. It was a young man, around Luffy's own age, that had a very particular nose that was like of a tengu. Overall, he was a slim teenager with medium-length black woolly hair and a long nose. He wore an olive green plaid bandana, a blue and white striped armband on his left arm. He seemed to carry with him a yellow satchel. You aren't pirates, are you? If you are, then you will have to get through me. It was obliviously that this boy was trying to act tough, but his stutter and shaking legs were a major giveaway. Then he took out a slingshot and aimed it at Luffy's head while the raven-haired pirate smirked. It made this young boy with a slingshot only more angry and yet more scared. I am the best sniper in Syrup Village. Why you don't stand a chance? Maybe it is because you are the only sniper on this island, Zoro said until Luffy silenced him afterwards. Put that useless thing down, boy. You don't use slingshots or guns for threats. You use them for action. Luffy said to the young man, using a piercing glance that nearly caused the latter to faint. A man that I admired as a boy once told me this, and so did your dad, Usopp. I learned everything there is to sniping from Usopp. Luffy spoke 2 names that his crew didn't recognize, but they kept quiet, seeing that this young man with a weird nose and a slingshot sure did. Of course, Luffy did, absent-mindedly, picked up a pebble with his foot and kicked it hard enough to dislodge the cliff that Usopp was leaning on and caused the latter to fall down to Luffy's level. But Usopp ignored the pain and raced towards Luffy, nearing shoving his nose into the latter's face. That is right. My name is Usopp and Usopp is my dad. You met my dad. How about you get out of my face, literally, and show us where we can sit down and talk for real? Luffy said, and Usopp backed away, seeing that same glance again. Oh okay, Usopp said, and later, Luffy and his crew found themselves being treated to a meal at a restaurant in Syrup Village. Wow. So my old man actually knew red-haired Shanks, the famous pirate. I told you already, Usopp, your dad is Shanks' sniper. In fact, ever since I first saw him use a ranged weapon, I never saw him miss his target. Ever. Luffy said, finishing some of his raw meat on stick and was chugging down his sake. I knew that my old man was special, but to be the sniper of the red-haired pirates, I am feeling more proud than ever. Usopp said with his chest puffed up. But anyways, why are you here for? Pirates don't really come to this island since there is barely anything worth stealing or taking over. We just live off our land here in the Syrup Village. I understand that, Usopp, and we are not asking much ince, we have plenty, but what we need is a secondary ship in order to get to where our original can't because of its large size. Luffy explained it to Usopp, who stroked his chin. Another ship? One that is smaller? Well, there is something I can tell you, Usopp said, and Luffy gave all his attention. You did see a large mansion that stands over the village? Luffy and his crew nodded. It was pretty hard to miss. I know of the owner, a young woman around my age. She is extremely wealthy and yet is sick to bed. She may be able to lend you something that sails in the size you came here for. Thanks, but how do you know that? Do you live with that girl? Luffy asked, and instead of a given answer, Usopp just grew a red face. Oh, look at the time. I need to get going. Usopp paid for his meal and ran out the restaurant like he realized he let the oven on with a cake burning inside or something. Much later, okay, here is the plan, Usopp said as he and Luffy and the pirate crew looked down on the slope located on the south side of the island. It has been recently covered in slippery oil, so much that it beats ice. When the pirates come and try to attack us, they will instead slip on this oil while we knock back any ones that do manage to get some attitude. That will keep them from Syrup Village. It is a good plan, Usopp, Luffy started to say, making the sniper puff his chest like a pufferfish until, if we are certain the pirates will come this way. There is another ramp to the north of her that they can use instead. Luffy's gang nodded while Usopp tried to pick up a little hesitation. Yeah, I am sure that this is the place. We heard it all from that fake butler and that backwards man, Usopp said in an attempt to fix his wounded pride. But it was true that Luffy and Usopp spied on a supposed butler of Kaya's who recently made a mockery of the young boy when Luffy and his gang decided to see just where did Usopp go in such a hurry. They did play a little with a trio of village boys who thought that their captain was eaten by Nami. After getting a little beating for being so rude at her, they said Usopp goes to Kaya's to tell lies and cheer her up from her illness. But back to the spying on the butler and a backwards man, who claimed to be a wandering hypnotist, and he proved that he is capable of doing the effect on himself as well as his victims. They were both planning to force Kaya to make a will to her butler and kill her so the butler in question, a pirate named Curo of the Thousand Plans, can inherit the vast wealth and set out to seize again. Luffy couldn't stop Usopp from panicking and charging into the village to warn them. To his dismay, Usopp found out the hard way that years of lying to them for every single day had nearly got him killed, and when he tried to take Kaya from her home and accuse her butler of being a pirate, she rejected him and ordered him away. When he went down the road with a bleeding arm and an even more bleeding heart, he found Luffy and his gang on the fence, waiting for him. Luffy sent him to the ground, scolding him for acting so rashly and not realizing just what will happen if he panicked. Usopp said that if he was going to be hated for being a liar, then he will protect the village while no one will know. Luffy and his crew just couldn't leave the island like that, so they volunteered to help Usopp. That brings us back, and then Luffy twitched and looked the opposite way. Thought so, there is a large group of people coming from a ship on the other side of the island. You had us place the trap in the wrong place, Luffy shouted, making his crew and Usopp widen their eyes. Then come this way, Usopp shouted and pointed to another path. Luffy and his crew had no choice but to follow since Usopp knew this island out of them the best. When they reached the slope opposite to the one doused in oil, and sure enough, a black-colored ship with a pirate's flag was docked. Pirates were even flooring out of the ship and up the slope. You were right, Luffy, but how did? That doesn't matter, Usopp. They can still get to the village and their captain is already at the mansion. We need to make sure that we will dish these pirates out before they can harm any of the other villagers. Luffy shouted and Usopp nodded before reluctantly joining the action. Zoro and Alvida used their weapons to pile through the numbers, with Luffy dealing with the ones that they missed, while Usopp and Nami were hitting some of their own while using tricks to lower their guards. Tricks like smokescreen, rotten eggs and flash bombs. And soon, the entire crew didn't get as much as a meter past the top of the slope. But that wasn't the end. What the hell happened? That voice had caused the invading pirates to cringe, but Luffy and his gang recognizing it. It belonged to a very peculiar man who wore strange clothes. This included a long coat covered in the discs he uses to fight and hypnotize, and red-lensed heart-shaped glasses. He also sported a blue trench coat, and a big hat of matching color as a pirate. He wore a white shirt under his coat, and green-brown gloves. He also has light brown pants with a black belt and black shoes with big white socks. Captain Django, we're sorry, these kids came from nowhere and totally beat us. One of them addressed the strange man as their captain. You are Black Cat pirates, kids can never bet you. He then took out his bladed pendulum and allowed it to shift like a pendulum in a grandfather. When I said, Django, you will heal up and become super strong. That sounded silly and stupid, but Django did it anyways. 1, 2, 3, Django, he said before covering his eyes with his hat, just in time for the Black Cat pirates to get up as if they were never scratched. One of them even managed to destroy a cliffside with just his fist. Now kill them. Django had hoped this will turn the tide, but then he felt something that made him have chills down his spine, and all of a sudden, the Black Cat pirate fell into unconsciousness. What? You shouldn't have relayed on such weak-minded men when you were going against us, Django. And don't even think about sending those two cowardly animals on that ship of yours. That got even his own gang off guard until the Black Cat pirate ship suddenly fell apart. I never liked the looks of it anyways. The color was just fine, but the rest just made it gloomy and impossible to find in the dark. Just what is wrong with you, Django? Did 3 years make my crew weak? That won't foil my plan. Everyone looked up at the top of the slope. There was a slim man with glasses and slicked black hair. He wore a black suit with 2 golden markings on it over a white shirt with a curious collar, with spiral-like protrusions on the edges, and a standard black tie. He also sports striped shoes. Curo, it sure took you long enough to get here. You better not have harmed Kaya. Luffy said coolly, much to the anger of the fake butler. So you are the boy who is making my plan that took 3 long years to happen, really hard to undergo, Curo said with frustration in his tone. Are you sure that you will just surrender since you don't have a crew to rely on to attack Syrup Village? Shut it. I can just deal with this pathetic village once I kill you all. And that means you too, Django, for failing me. Curo shouted, which got Django to cringe, but the killer fake butler never moved an inch when. You are after me then, are you, Curo? From behind Curo was the object of the latter's bloodthirst and greed. She was a fairly tall, slim, and pale girl with blonde hair. She has wide brown eyes that are of a sort of lighter shade. Despite her fortune as the heir of her wealthy family, she is rarely seen in anything but simple neat clothing, be it a plain long dress or common clothing such as a skirt and jacket. Why, Miss Kaya? What has gotten to you? I am going to kill these ruffians who are just after your money. You should go home and rest. Mary told me everything, Curo, and I am not going anywhere. Kaya talked back, and yet Curo didn't even try to. In that case, then you will have no choice than give up your fortune to me. Then maybe I will let you all go. Curo taunted and took out the most menacing gloves any of the witnesses have personally seen before. They were furry black gloves that had katana blades sticking out on each finger. No, I refuse to believe someone who is really a pirate and a killer one that I refuse to do what you want me to. Kaya tried to pull a strong front, which was a very hard effort with her illnesses making her unstable. In that case, forgive me, mistress, Curo said in a sadist tone and charged at Kaya for the kill. Kaya! Usopp cried out from the top of his lungs, but instead the sound of flesh being cut. It was the sound of a blade matching something that was tougher than it was as sharp. I may call myself a pirate too, Curo, but I am nothing like you. Luffy must have broken the sound barrier or something to beat Curo in match blades with the former's own. What is more, Luffy had the strength to easily push Curo away from Kaya to give them both some space. Usopp, Nami, this is an order. Keep this maniac from touching Kaya, Luffy said to his 2 crew members, who both nodded and charged with Kaya in tow. No, get out of my way, boy. I will kill you all, Curo shouted, and getting sloppy as a result with his random but messy hacking that Luffy still was able to defect without a hitch. And while you are trying to do that, Zoro, Luffy said, and got one of his first mate's attention. You and Alvida amuse yourself with the cannon fodder. They are starting to wake up. And while you are at, keep them alive. I need them alive for something much later. Zoro turned to see the Black Cat pirates indeed getting formed their unconsciousness, complaining about uncontrollable shivering. And they nearly forgot about Django, who was someone relived that all this happened. Now let's try this again, and if you have any honor even as a pirate, you will forget about everyone for the sake of this duel over the fate of Syrup Village. You won't want to break that honor, will you? Luffy said, repelling Curo with his blade to get some more private space. Bah! All of them can die if it means that my plan will succeed. That is all that matters to me. Curo didn't even care about what Luffy said and charged again, and with some real attacks this time that actually made Luffy go on the defense and even the offense. You are getting it, Curo, Luffy said with a smile, even among the clanging of the blades which filled the air between the 2 pirate captains. This is actually quite fun. Shut up and lose and die. Curo was not listening to Luffy at all from the looks of it. Okay, Curo. I will fight not to lose or die. I will fight to win this time, Luffy said while using his free hand to reach for his rapier and added some of stabbing attacks to force Curo on his own guard. But also, unfortunately for Curo, Luffy got even more aggressive in his strikes that nicked the blades very badly. Meanwhile, Zoro and Alvida were having a ball with the Black Cat pirates, knocking them out one by one in quick session. It was like a whack-a-mole game, even though they don't knock what those are. They didn't care, just about having their own fun until the ground shook a little and the sound of birds flying urgently from a portion of the forest was heard. All of them turned to see a large plume of smoke emitting from that same place, which made Luffy laugh. Looks like your last-ditch effort to complete your plan has failed. Surrender now, Curo, Luffy proclaimed and pointed his rapier at Curo for good measure, but instead of a surrender, he got a menacing laugh from Curo instead. My plans never fail. They always work, and I don't care who gets to die if I need to. You all are dead, Curo said before getting limp and started to shake like a weed in the wind. The Black Cat pirates started to panic, which confused Zoro and Alvida but worrying Luffy until Curo disappeared. Shikushi, Death Scope. What happened was an unseen massacre as members of the Black Cat pirates dropped randomly with sudden slashes on their bodies. It was like someone was hacking at them in an unpredictable manner that got Luffy's attention when a piece of the cliffside was cut next to him. That meant that Curo was now moving so fast, even he couldn't tell where he will end up slashing, and he won't care. But what got Luffy off was Zoro getting slashed in the leg, and Alvida was nicked on her side, causing them to grunt and scream in pain. Luffy then saw All Ray and then struck something heading towards him. It was Curo, and that hit in the stomach had halted the Shikushi. You attack your own crew, my own crew, and tried to kill a young boy who has proven to be a better pirate than you ever did, Curo. I will never allow you to hurt anyone ever again. Luffy then forced Curo into the same cliffside as before, leaving behind a big crater in Curo's wake. Say good night, Curo. Luffy reeled in his fist, which attacked like a spring covered by rubber skin. Curo saw it and knew that it was definitely kill him and ruin his plan. No, my plan can never fail. Don't. Curo tried to cover his face in order or protect it from Luffy's punch, but instead, he heard a piece of the cliffside to his left get destroyed instead. Then you are a man who is not even worth killing. If you can't handle being a wanted man, then you shouldn't have been a pirate and never a man to tangle with my crew, Luffy said, and watched as Curo finally fell into blissful unconsciousness of his own at last. But don't worry, Curo, I have my own plans for you. XXXXX. And when Curo was taken in the ship, bound for good measure and will be out for a while, the Black Cat pirates were banished from the island for good. Usopp asked of the children trio, Kaya and Luffy's crew, to keep this a secret. He said that even though he had saved the village, No one will ever believe him and think all this is just another lie. His Usopp pirates agreed and went home and acted like they were just out playing in the dirt a lot early because they felt like it. But Kaya had other plans. She felt like even though she knew that Usopp wasn't lying, she still needed to look after the one boy she liked the most in the world and vice versa. She wanted not just to listen to stories but to be there when Usopp actually lived them out. Mary, one of Kaya's actual butlers that was supposedly killed off when Curo crushed Kaya's new glasses and unleashed his contained bloodlust, even gave them what they were looking for. A new but smaller ship. It was about half the size of the king's gourd with a simple design, but what really stood out was a forehead that was a goat's head. Mary said that he had constructed the ship and named it the Going Merry after himself. Come on everyone. I have a few things to share with you since it will still be a while before we arrive in the Grand Line. Luffy shouted from the deck and everyone heard it from their rooms, getting adjusted to a new crew member and a second, smaller ship in tow. When everyone came around, Luffy started to walk in back and forth in a line before setting his sights on Alvida, technically his first crew member. Alvida, can you escape smoke? Can you shatter boulders? Can you use your powers to slide across water? Luffy started to talk really weird and Alvida just silently shook her head and watched her captain turn to Zoro. Zoro, can you cut iron? Cut steel? Slice from a distance? Cut an entire ship in half? Hell no. Nami, can predict weather up to extent of hours rather than minutes? Can you dodge thunderbolts and bullets? Can you use lightning like a hammer? No. Kaya, can you fix cuts and bruises in seconds? Heal broken bones and illnesses in minutes? Attach severed limbs on the fly and in the midst of battle? Of course not, Luffy-san. And you, Usopp, can you hit a moving target miles away? Can you use your arms to send a projectile through barriers and shields? Can you tell what to use for what target while in battle? Why are you asking all this? It is impossible up, but Luffy didn't lose his stance. No, Usopp, we are going to be sailing in the world's greatest sea. Things like those are never impossible, they are essential instead. Luffy said with a glare that dared anyone to keep talking back. Then how are we going to learn how to do it all? Kaya showed to be the more mature and calm about new developments. I am glad you were the one to ask, Kaya, because I need to offer something to you first. Luffy said before leaving the deck for something, and it didn't take long for him to return with a chest. Opening it, everyone was in awe that it was another fruit. Is that an Akuma no Mi? Alvida said, the one other than Luffy as the devil fruit users on the king's gourd. Yes, and among all of them, this fruit is one of the few that are the most sought out because of its power. But I need you to eat it, Kaya. Luffy said, and Kaya tenderly took it out and into her hands. She raised her eyebrow about all this and followed Luffy's silent request to eat it. She immediately spat out, as if she was eating something poisonous and knew from the moment it touched all the taste buds on her tongue. Now what, Captain? Kaya asked as she just about removed the awful fruit out of her mouth. What she didn't expect was Luffy taking out her katana and slicing her arm off. Luffy, what the hell are you doing? Usopp nearly charged at Luffy, with the aim of striking back on mind, but not before Luffy grabbed Kaya's severed arm and placing it back on. Kaya stumbled back only to discover that she could move her arm again, and after a few more seconds, that cut all but disappeared. Sorry about that sudden surprise, but it was necessary for you to eat the fruit and I need to show you why. Luffy said sheepishly at Kaya while helping her back on her feet. A glare from her and Nami had beat Usopp's outburst by a few miles and Luffy laughed nervously at it. You better start explaining, Luffy-kun. Right. Luffy said almost like a kicked puppy as he took out a book from his robe. Here, read page 23. When Nami opened the page, she read. The Zenu no Mi, or the heal fruit, at default, will allow the user to gain an accelerated healing factor in which all miners take seconds while severed limbs need some more time. It will need training to reach its full potential, however. Once the user does, he or she can heal from near-death injuries and even fatal illnesses. That explained a lot, and the crew looked to their captain, who had been smiling the whole time. Touché, Luffy. Usopp said, looking a little down for worrying about nothing and doubting the actions of his captain. So, Zoro said to break the silence. When do we start out real training to gain the other skills, Luffy? That somehow got everyone ready to learn as well, and instead, they just got Luffy to change his smile into a smirk which nearly intimated them. End of chapter 3. Almost done. Luffy dragged on the deck with a piece of cloth that he had bought from Kaya along with the Going Merry and the rest of the supplies from Syrup Town. It is complete. Now that got everyone's attention from their training on the deck of the King's Gourd. They all went down to see what was up. Behold, our flag. Luffy's crew were in awe and satisfaction to see at least a decent flag design. In the style of the original Jolly Roger, only the skull wore a straw hat like Luffy's and the crossbones were replaced with a katana and a saber. All in all, this flag reflected Luffy the best out of the crew, but then again that is because he is the founder and captain of the crew. That is actually pretty good drawing skills there, Captain. That comment came from none other than Curo himself, whom was taken by Luffy and brought aboard his ship after the Black Cat pirates were defeated. After waking up bound in chains, Curo was offered to be the strategist of the crew while learning how to adapt to any situation, and the only way to do that is to take him through the Grand Line. Curo was also offered to become an actual pirate rather than some kind of outlaw sailor who became tired of being pursued by the Marines every single day. But that will never be as good as I can do. Usopp puffed up his chest to make him seem very tough and very manly. Luffy smirked. If you can then paint this on the spare flags and the sails. Unlike most pirates, I prefer that the symbol will be on the sails as well as the flags. Luffy said, with the flag in question hiding his smirk while seeing the flames in Usopp's eyes as the sniper grabbed all the paint on the ship, took down the sails and got to work. And meanwhile, you all should get back to your training because I need to tend to a few things. But remember, in an hour I will come out and oversee the training results and I will take my own turn at it. Luffy hid his smirk once again from behind the flag to see the pale faces of his remaining crew members. Seeing them hurry back to some activity that involved one to wear a blindfold while their partner will take a wooden sword and attempt to hit them while the former to dodge. It was a harsh practice since everything hurts twofold if we can't see it coming to happen to us. But after a week since Syrup Village, results were good and everyone had noticed that they could feel the wooden sword coming with enough time to dodge. And yet this day was more than for training but for a little walk down memory lane. Nami had one of the earliest memory of what she was learning, Haki. Haki, or as Luffy explained, weaponized will or ambition. Luffy called it the user's spirit, adding it in battle, and Haki can alert to incoming danger or create an invisible suit of armor or both if trained together. And yet that is all the basics compared to what Luffy has been doing since that day in a settlement named Orange Town. Flashback begins. Nami had just gotten her hands on yet another large sack of berries and gold, easily 5 million. But it was just sinking her ship, so she needed a much better ship to carry it all back to her destination, currently unknown to all but Nami herself. She had spotted a much bigger ship that was more like a patrol boat compared to the dingy she had to compromise with, and on board were 3 pirate grunts. But they weren't a problem, easily falling for one of her 101 tricks to get more by stealing techniques. Nami faked to be sick and tired and in the need for help so that the grunts will sail close enough for her to get their ship. But there was a bonus. Nami had sensed a rogue thundercloud and said that her former ship will sail in the direction non-stop, and the grunts never saw it coming. Of course, Nami forgot all about that when she found out that the grunts belonged to Buggy the clown pirate, and while that meant she will have to watch her back from every hour to every 5 minutes, it also meant that there was a treasure map. And there was one to be found, and it was more than just a map, it was one to the Grand Line, where the world's greatest dangers but also the greatest treasures are to be found. Nami just loves treasure, but she is not stupid enough to try the Grand Line all by herself and in a patrol boat, so she put such thoughts aside and continued to look for treasure. That was when she found Orange Town, which seemed to be deserted. So Nami hid her boat and tried to see if the houses contained any belongings that were left behind. Instead, she was found by a trio of freaks that seemed to be from a freak circus that fired them because they were too freaky even for them. They saw that map and came under the conclusion that Nami actively stole it from their captain, Buggy. Nami realized that the map did belong to Buggy, and somehow, he figured out that it was stolen already. "Come back here, give that map back, you thief." And so, the trio of freaks chased after Nami throughout Orange Town while the girl in question was trying to either outrun them or lose them. But as they were gaining on her, someone landed between Nami and her pursuers. Stupid bird. They all heard the gruff tone of a young man having a bad day, but they were expecting the sounds of bones breaking and screaming in pain. Instead, Nami saw a boy just a year younger than her rise up to show that he was lean but very well built. It made her blush at the sight. Also, that wild raven hair and outfit made him look like a very wild man indeed, and that only made Nami blush more with the thoughts of the times that she can be with this wild hunk, interrupting my nap only to decide over this town that I didn't taste good. How insulting. That was then that Nami had finally thought of a plan. Boss. Nami tried to have an excited and straight face, but she only embarrassed herself by calling this hunk in front of her eyes as boss. Girls only call boys around their age boss when they want to be dominated by them, and that includes the sexual, but that wasn't what Nami had in mind right now. You have come to save me, thank you. I will leave those 3 jerks to you. The boy was confused but didn't seem to notice that the 3 freaks had decided to change targets between Nami and this boy that fell from the sky. So you're that bitch's boss, huh? Too bad for you. We're asked of the great pirate Buggy and thus we can kill you. They then started to laugh as they raised their weapons on the boy without realizing that there was bloodlust in the air as soon as they started to talk. But before they can even touch the boy, they heard a very sharp sound, sort of like a clink. The sound when a sword is placed back into its scabbard. But before they could respond to that, they blacked out and fell to the ground in a similar way to that of a boar shot down. Jerks. Wow. You are strong and handsome. The boy turned to see Nami, who was sitting on a rooftop of one of the vacant houses. I can really use someone like you. We will make a fortune. I don't even know your name. The boy said very bluntly, and Nami may have felt like an arrow through her chest, but she quickly regained her composure. She can't be angry because it was true. My name is Nami. Expert thief that specializes in stealing from pirates. At your service, she said in hopes that will clear things up, and it just made the young man frown. My name is Monkey D. Luffy and I don't take offers from thieves. I shouldn't even be standing around here. I need to find my ship and my crew. Stupid bird. The boy, now named Luffy, ignored Nami coming after him as he walked into a certain direction. Hey wait. Nami ran after Luffy and finally made him stop when she ran directly on his path. You don't mean I have that. You did beat them up for insulting me, right? Luffy finally smiled and nodded. Of course. And it was cool. They didn't stand a chance. Nami acted like an excited kid who saw a hero save the day right in front of her eyes. But all that turned to worriedness and curiosity almost immediately. But how did you do it? You didn't even move from that spot. Nami Dima followed Luffy's arm and she saw something like a grove in the pavement where Luffy originally stood. Sorry, but I have to leave before you rob me, Luffy said and tried to get back on his way. I won't steal from my hero. Only pirates, Nami shouted, and Luffy just turned his head to show off a victory smirk. Are you saying that you are a pirate? No, I am saying that you are a thief. You said that yourself. Luffy said to break the ice, and Nami just blushed a red that can rival a ripe tomato. Still, I need an actual navigator to get to the Grand Line according to this map, Luffy said, and Nami panicked when she couldn't feel the map she stole in any of her pockets. Hey, give that back. Nami ran to get that map back and missed once Luffy playfully raised his arm to keep the map out of Nami's reach. The fall only gave her a little scratch but also stunned her for a few seconds. Plenty of time for Luffy to admire what Nami had been hiding from him under her skirt. When she got back on her feet, she saw the look in Luffy's eyes and suddenly felt only to cover her behind and blush in embarrassment. Please Luffy, I need that map to help my village. No matter how hard Nami tried, she just couldn't get angry from all this. I will give this back on only one condition, Luffy said, knowing that he had gotten Nami into a corner where she is desperate enough to do anything for that map. You will show me where the harbor is and you will get the map back if you will be a good bad girl and steal all the gold from Buggy without getting caught. That was long but to the point, and Nami nodded without hesitation. She seriously thought that Luffy was going to ask something a lot naughtier for her to do. Later, Luffy was at the harbor with the map still in his hand while waiting for Zoro to find his way with his ship at least. Luffy did leave a compass and another map that showed all the nearby towns and nearby islands. Even someone like Zoro will know how to use a map and compass, hopefully. Still, Luffy was not alone. He had Chow Chow, the town dog, keeping him company. Chow Chow is a simple small white dog that often has its tongue out and has short ears, thin white fur, and beady black eyes. And yet this dog was covered in bruises and also had a crumpled box of dog food in his mouth. Chow Chow had owed Luffy so much when the young man had fought to avenge the destruction of the pet store that once belonged to his owner until he passed away to an illness. It was all done by a giant lion on its supposed trainer of all animals, Moji. But even with his familiar named Richie, Moji lost to Luffy from the start, and it was a matter of time before he was punched right into the ground, out like a light. That ruined box was the only thing that survived the store being burned down, so Chow Chow will keep it as his treasure. To maybe one day, use it to reopen the shop and protect by himself as well. But just then, there was a momentous explosion from within the town. Luffy just sighed. "I should have known," he said with a frustrated tone and placed the map away in his jacket. "Keep an eye for a large ship in the shape of a large gourd Chow Chow. Then convince a scary man to follow you into town, okay?" Luffy said to the dog, who barked and nodded before looking back on the sea, while Luffy himself then raced into Orange Town. There he found the trouble. Buggy the clown was on a rampage. Buggy is a slim, yet muscular blue-haired man with an appearance resembling that of a clown, as to mirror his epithet. Buggy's face is covered with makeup, just like a clown. He had crossbones going down his face forming an X. He also has green eyeliner and green lipstick, with a curvy line going down both sides of his face. In his pirate captain attire, he dons a striped white and red shirt with short sleeves, white gloves reminiscent of the ones worn by clowns, a sash around his waist like many other pirates, and a pair of loose pants reaching to his calves, just above a pair of striped socks and pointy shoes. He also has a scarf around his neck. Hanging from his shoulders there is an orange, fur-lined captain's coat. On his head he has an orange hat with his Jolly Roger on it, over a bandana with the same pattern of his shirt. And Buggy seemed to be angry enough to tear up all the houses with his huge cannon. "Where is that bitch? She stole my treasure. Blow up this whole place until you find her," Buggy shouted among the sounds of cannon firing and the sound of house exploding. Luffy just ignored all that and found Nami well out of fire range, even though she was as quiet as a mouse. "Don't think that you will getting my map for this mess, Nami," Luffy said and scared her from her hiding place. Luffy, I am sorry. I didn't think that W would have." Nami was halted in her stuttering by Luffy's facial expression. "Just go and find a hurt white dog and wait for a large ship to come with a man of green hair and 3 swords as well as a woman with a large club. Then tell them what happened," Luffy said and started to leave Nami, but not without adding this. "I will make sure that Buggy will never try and steal your treasure while you are doing it, okay?" he said with a grin that made Nami blush once again and her heart start racing. Not trusting her own voice, Nami just nodded like a woodpecker and ran to the harbor. Meanwhile, Luffy walked right into the war zone that Buggy was having fun, big nose. That caused everything to freeze in silence, including the pirate captain in question. "Who are you calling a big nose? Fire the buggy ball," Buggy shouted and ordered for Luffy's supposed demise by firing one of those oversized cannonballs that were acting like bombs once they hit their target hard enough. And yet Luffy's didn't die or get blown up. He just caught the buggy ball like a baseball with his forearm acting like the spring of a pinball machine. "You are exactly like what Shanks always told me, Buggy," Luffy said and reeling in his arm. Gum slingshot, and sent the buggy ball back to Buggy. He and his pirate gang suddenly turned cowardly as their own cannonball bomb was headed their way. They were then caught up in a gigantic explosion. But Luffy still didn't move from that spot, even when he somehow sensed that the town was crowding with various and many life signatures. There was even one of a familiar woman and one the size of an average-sized dog. "I told them to stay put," Luffy muttered, but still didn't move his focus from the cloud of smoke. "You can come out, Buggy, you can't fool me." The townspeople who showed their faces around a corner as well as Nami and Chow Chow looked in with confusion and shock. How can even Buggy the clown survive something like that? They got their answer with a fit of laughter, but they weren't going to like it. Out of the blue and smoke were the bodies of 2 clown-themed pirates, both unconscious and held in the air by a disembodied hand. "How dare you embarrass me like this?" Buggy growled, obviously using his own men as shields to protect himself from the explosion. The townspeople and Nami commented on that very negatively, but both Luffy and Buggy ignored all that. "Your hands, so you did eat an Akuma no Mi like Shanks said you did on his old ship," Luffy remarked, that got Buggy to laugh out of controllably. "That's right. I ate the Bara no Mi. I have become the bane of every swordsman in the world. That is how great and powerful I am," Buggy proclaimed, but Luffy was not to be interested. And it is how I am going to get all the treasure in the world as well as getting my revenge on that bitch who is good for nothing but stealing and backstabbing." Buggy started to laugh but also to shiver. "Hey, who cut off the heat? I am freezing to death." True to that, ice and icicles started to form on every house and every wall around Luffy's position. What is more, Nami and Chow Chow also felt it, but they nearly forgot about the freezing temperatures when they saw every single townsfolk hiding among the alleyways collapse as if they suddenly perished. "Don't say another word, Buggy. Your stupid voice. I am sick of you smearing your old captain's name by doing such disgraceful work in his home ocean. And I am sick of what you are calling Nami." Luffy exploded in an encrypted tone until he took out his saber and, to the shock of Nami and Chow Chow, stabbed Buggy through the left middle torso like a pitchfork in a bale of hay. "You are not great, Buggy. You are not powerful, and you are not going to hurt this town. Destroy their hard work. Ruin their home. And you are not going to kill anyone else on this island. Buggy?" Luffy screamed and delivered a swift and mean slice across Buggy's entire chest, spilling spoiled blood for all those to see. Meanwhile, Buggy was in great pain and confusion. How is someone like him, who ate the bara no mi, can be cut? But what had somehow caused Buggy to forget about the pain was him seeing Luffy change. Change into a demon, to a ghost, a madman, to a devilish monkey, to the devil himself. How is that Buggy, with a stab wound and a large hack mark, will hallucinate? "Now go, Buggy. Go and never come back." Luffy placed his blades away and stretched his arm. Stretched almost an entire mile before sending it back twice the speed of sound, leaving behind a sonic boom. All this happening while Luffy looked at the stunned and helpless form of Buggy. Never underestimate the power of a rubber band. Gum Gum Snapshot. True to the name, Nami and Chow Chow heard the snap a rubber band used after it is stretched and released. Only this sound was like of a bone snapping into two when Luffy's extended arm hit Buggy, sending the clown of all pirates flying. When Luffy relaxed his arm after the attack, he turned to show Nami a regretful expression on his face, one that surprised her after witnessing the raven-haired pirate take joy in crushing Buggy. "I am sorry, Nami," he said in a soft tone that complemented his expression perfectly. "I shouldn't have forced you see all this. A gentleman never spills blood in front of a lady such as yourself. You must think I am a monster now." Luffy was cut off when he felt like someone crashed in him, causing him to only sway in the wind. "You are such a wonderful and thoughtful young man, Luffy," Nami said, not the response that Luffy was expecting. "You don't have to worry about me. I have already seen blood spilled before. I can take it again." She must have said it to assure Luffy, but now, the pirate wanted to know more and more about her. Flashback ends, and he did. Luffy learned a lot more about Nami. And over the course from Orange Town to Syrup Village, the two had found themselves in a relationship. Still, Nami didn't get any private training in hockey. Luffy never wanted to play favorites even with his girlfriend. He was just lucky that Nami won't have it any other way, and so far, she had gotten a good distance in the basics and she could just barely sense when Luffy comes in when she is taking a shower after training. It was not much, but anything is always more than nothing. Big brothers. That was one way to start the morning, with a voice of discovery. If only everyone appreciated that. "Stop calling us brothers," Nami snapped on hers, Kaya's and Alvida's behalfs. "I can't believe that Captain let those two idiots lead the way. Ah well, it was since we saved one of them, of course." Alvida muttered and went back to her training, strengthening her body to handle large shifts with massive weights, for her fighting style with her club. Nami couldn't argue with that last sentence though. Johnny and Yosaku were fellow bounty hunters that knew Zoro and vice versa all the way back when Zoro was merely a bounty hunter himself with the nickname, Pirate Hunter. How they met Luffy and the gang was after Usopp had finished painting the spare flags and sails with Luffy's style of the Jolly Roger. The Going Merry, the scout ship of the King's Gourd and placed in a special compartment for any future use, had a single cannon compared to the 5 ones stored in the larger ship. Luffy was trying to make sure that the sole cannon on the Going Merry was working right. Usopp heard the racket Luffy was making and decided to give it a go, but never specified his chosen target, which was a large rock in the sea. Instead of getting praise for it, Luffy berated Usopp for being so careless. He said that he didn't want to aim at the rock because he claimed to have felt 2 life forces on the other side. And attacking on their own deck was one of the said life forces. revealed to be an average-sized man with somewhat tanned skin. He is always seen wearing a pair of sunglasses and has a black tattoo on his left cheek that reads the kanji for see. Johnny has short, black hair and is usually seen carrying his sword. His eyebrows always seem to be pointing down to make a scowl, even when he was smiling to see Zoro show himself on the deck. Yosaku was supposed to be dying, since he collapsed all of a sudden, and that attack on their only ship didn't help. Luffy said that Yosaku just had the common ailment called scurvy that can be cured. To do this, Luffy ordered Usopp to retrieve all the lemons from the storage closet and make Yosaku drink the lemon's juices. Luffy explained that scurvy was caused when sailors suffer an extreme lack of vitamin D, which is abundant in lemon juice. Despite saying that it takes 2 days to cure, Yosaku claimed to have been cured almost immediately, which annoyed everyone, while Kaya was a little confused and began to associate this miracle healing with her own until Yosaku coughed up blood and collapsed again when they tried to make an impressive introduction. Kaya had lost every ounce of respect on that moment. Still, Johnny wanted to make up for all this trouble by telling them where they can get a cook that can adapt to sailing, and also where the man that Zoro hopes to find and defeat to achieve his dream, and currently. There it is, the floating restaurant open to any type of sailor as long as they have money. Johnny pointed out, and the pirates were surprised to see something kind of building that was indeed floating in the sea but looked like something of fish with a fish head on one side while a fin on the exact opposite side. That is where Hawkeye's usually goes to. The bounty hunter added much to the excitement of Zoro while they both ignored Luffy's strange sneer to that sentence, which is what the pirate captain always did to that piece of info. Well, at least it is a restaurant, Johnny, and those are the best places to find a chef. And we need one before the Grand Line, Luffy said while glaring at the two of them, in an effort to get their minds back on track. And that helped, a little, until they ran into someone first. He was a Marine lieutenant that was named Iron Fist, full body by the knuckle duster on his right hand. He looked like the real thing, and since the King's Gourd had a pirate's flag, it meant that full body had to take them down as a Marine. But Luffy didn't quite respect that because of the aura of arrogance, and that full body was only acting so cool to impress the woman on his ship. Like a ladies' man. Sink it, full body said, and when one of the sailors obeyed and shot a cannonball into the direction of the King's Gourd, everyone there had the shock of their lifetime at the first one. Luffy had extended his arm just in time to catch the cannonball like it was a baseball, but since it was still packing impractical force, Luffy's arm reacted like a spring reeling in. And then Luffy crushed the cannonball, releasing the pieces into the sea while his arm was still reeled in. I am not in the mood, full body. You should have known better, and you stink of Giorgio's heartbreak. 1. That stuff is not only expensive but just poor wine disguised with perfume, Luffy said, and when his arm finally released from its coiled spring-like shape to somehow blast full body into the faraway railing. Here, take this and go away. Full body got up only to have a full wine bottle shoved into his arms. He looked at the label and had a slight disgusted look on his face. But then he shrugged and ordered for a wine glass so that a sailor can try it for poison. Instead, that sailor had the look of total bliss on his face. So full body tried it out, seeing that 10 more Marines didn't die from poison but they could have from bliss given how happy they looked. The Marine lieutenant was wondering how such a cheap brand, compared to the ones he is used to, can have the best example of wine in all his life. Full body just shrugged and kept it, despite protests from his crew who wanted to sip themselves. Meanwhile, Luffy and his crew had finally reeled in their sails and entered the restaurant. Luckily there was a table built for 7 customers, so they helped themselves and waited for a waiter to take their orders. That was the only problem with the place, there were no waiters. Before they could try and find out how did the other customers get their orders when a commotion started at another table. Turning to face it, the pirates saw a familiar face, and a woman that was dressed like this was a ball dance with a king as the host. With her was full body, and he seemed to be on a date with that woman and thought that getting the name of the wine brand served to them will impress not only his date but also everyone else. Luffy had other thoughts and was the real one right on the money when full body asked someone else if he was right. Instead, dead wrong, sir. Everyone else turned to what looked like a young man that balanced bowls filled to the brim with soup not only in his left hand but on his head perfectly. And I am no waiter, the name is Sanji. Sanji is a slim, yet muscular, long-legged young man with blonde hair and keeps his hair brushed over the left side of his face. Among Sanji's physical traits are his distinctive eyebrows. Both form a spiral but at different ends. His right eyebrow forms a spiral at the outer end, while his left eyebrow forms a spiral at the inner end. This means his face is asymmetrical with the position of his eyebrow spirals. This, however, is not fully seen due to his hairstyle. Sanji is wearing a black, double-breasted suit with a tie and a long-sleeved, buttoned shirt with pinstripes. That blunt statement had caused everyone to laugh at Full Body, who was embarrassed with himself and silently wondered why he got it wrong. In his thoughts, it was revealed that he asked for the brand he proclaimed and thought that was the one he drank. That was the sure sign of a fraud, and Full Body wanted to get even by planting a fake bug in his soup to get back at Sanji, but instead, the young man only caused the plan to backfire. That and Sanji flirting with his date had finally caused Full Body to snap and break the table in half. Then Full Body had tried to get aggressive with Sanji in retaliation for having his date ruined and himself humiliated, but he severely underestimated Sanji. In no time at all, Full Body was covered in blood and dangled from Sanji's hand, the only thing about the blonde man that was stained with blood itself. Sanji then coldly talked Full Body down to waste food in front of a sea chef. "Hey waiter." Sanji turned with a sigh to see Luffy giving him his direct attention. "You better clean that up or you can get arrested for assaulting a high-ranking marine. They hate that, you know," Luffy said with a smirk, and everyone got the nigh irresistible urge to do the same. "And you can forget about getting a date with that guy's girl, she is scared out of her wits. And you said that you love women." Luffy suddenly gotten serious and everyone felt something that made them want to avoid Sanji. Then Luffy got up from his seat and to the blood pool, where he started to lift Full Body to his feet. And in a mere instant, a couple of marine sailors appeared. "Good timing, now get your boss and his girl out of here." "Why don't you do it?" one of the customers shouted, like they thought Luffy was being lazy. "Because I am a pirate. Think before you speak and please spare this poor guy's bad day from getting worse," Luffy said in an honest tone that no one had ever found the strength or words to retort with. "Hey, you had no right to barge in and scold me. You're just another pirate here," Sanji yelled with a bored look, but somehow had the shivers by seeing the look in Luffy's eye. "You say you're a chef when you deliver other people's food, that you never made, Sanji," Luffy said, and somehow, that got everyone else's attention. "You call yourself a chef, so where is your hat, your apron? You look nothing like a chef but a waiter, so sue all of us." Giggling and snickering was to be heard, and Sanji was starting to blush in embarrassment. "And what kind of chef smokes? You need that tongue still sharp to taste food, right? Not only are you flirt, a liar, but also a waiter that has as much taste as last week's hamburger. Just look at yourself and you will see what I mean." Now the whole place was filled with laughter and Sanji was shaking, like he was going to explode, until another voice was heard among the laughter. "That is a good head on your shoulders, kid. I never saw anyone talk down Sanji like that before, and I had him for over half his life." That voice was like a man too, but much older and gruffer, much like an elderly or experienced man. The name is Zeph, by the way. Zeph is an elderly-looking man who still retains his blonde-colored hair, which he keeps underneath his extra-long chef's hat. His mustache is considerably long, and complete with a beard. He wore his chef's uniform, with a blue ascot, and white apron. Also, he has a peg leg and he seems to have no trouble walking with it. "Nice name, and you smell of experience. I am scared to ask how you lost your leg as well," Luffy said with words that can be passed off as a joke, but Zeph smiles, seeing that the boy was serious. "I am afraid that I don't have the time to tell you my story, just to pick up my idiotic and loud-mouthed son," Zeph said, and he did, in a very rough way, as he ignored Sanji's protesting and dragged him away as if Sanji was suddenly a bag of potatoes. Meanwhile, Luffy relaxed back into his seat and started to eat along with his crew, who knew better not to piss Luffy off by eating before him. When they finished their food and were planning to pay the bill as well as see if they can recruit a chef into the crew, something else happened, and it was bound to be interesting. The crew of pirates learned that while they were eating, there was another customer that appeared. One that hadn't eaten in 5 days but had no money, so he was kicked out and denied of food. That man happened to be Jin, the man-demon, from the Krieg pirates, named after their captain, who had an unhealthy reputation for cowardly and dirty tactics a sailor can ever think of. The reason they were getting nervous was that Sanji had secretly fed Jin and that convinced the man demon to consider this restaurant to the rest of the Krieg pirates. The chefs were all in an outrage that Sanji not only fed an unpaying customer but also unleashed the Krieg pirates on the Baratie. While most of the crew were worrying about this, Luffy had gotten an interest in Sanji's selflessness and thoughtfulness, so the captain might consider recruiting the latter as the cook. While Luffy's crew had their own thoughts about this decision, the discussion was put to a side when the customers looked to see a ship with a Jolly Roger that had an hourglass on both sides. One of them said it was the sign of the Krieg pirates, as it means that once anyone saw the flag, their time on Earth is over. However, they forgot about panicking at the flag to notice that the ship itself was a wreck. It had the signs of a storm wrecking it, but Luffy was the only one to notice that there were also signs of intense battles as well. Just what could happen that involved a storm and a battle at the same time? Ocean battles are the worst, but a storm at sea will never make things easier. Meanwhile, Jin came in with a man that was much bigger than he is and was wearing a regal attire consisting of a fur-lined coat over a yellow vest with black spots like motifs. Around his thick neck there is a big golden chain. He also was wearing light purple pants and black shoes. Krieg had begged and bowed for food, something that caused the customers and Jin himself to be shocked at and the chefs to shamelessly mock Krieg for. But once again, it was Sanji's cue and he arrived with a plate of food and something to drink while delivering a kick to one of the main chefs who was still laughing at Krieg. But the other chefs were quick to try and stop Sanji while also trying to destroy the food before it reaches Krieg. But they never counted on Luffy expertly catching the dish while not even wasting a crumb. "Thank you. The food was just fine, but you need a better taste in wine, Sanji," Luffy said while shattering the bottle that Sanji initially had on one of the chef's head. When some of the droplet got into his mouth, that same chef said that it was terrible. "Here. Try it now." Luffy then placed the plate of food and a wine bottle of his own right where even a man starving to death like Krieg can reach easily. And he did, counting it down like a frantic and greedy pig. And while he was at it, he chugged the wine bottle until it ran dry. The chefs protested and questioned Luffy's sanity, but they couldn't even scream when they saw and felt something out of nightmare. "You call yourselves cooks, and what is worst, you call yourselves sea cooks. I thought your duty was to feed those who are starving to death. Are you that foolish and cowardly to let someone die of starvation to sleep better at night?" Before anyone could answer, Krieg emerged from the floor and stood up with a mighty roar. Just like when a bear awakens from hibernation. "That food was delicious. I feel that my strength is returning. Thank you, boy with a straw hat." Luffy tipped his spoken hat as one of the manners he learned from back home. "Now then, I ask of you all to make food for my crew." Once Krieg made that announcement, everyone started to protest. As if that was the same as being told to jump ship and die or something. The chefs all refused. They all claimed that if they do feed Krieg's crew then they doom the ship. Sanji, of course, ignored them and tried to get to the kitchen to start cooking, but the other chefs had suddenly surrounded him and pointed their pistols at Sanji, threatening to kill him. But all of a sudden, the cooks all but fell to the floor. They started to complain about how numb they started to feel, and so much that they can't find the strength to stay on their legs. One of the many things I learned from a friend who is a sailor in the Grand Line is this. Guns and rifles are only used for threats when they handled by cowards. Real men use them for actions instead of words. "Huh?" Krieg started to holler at the sight. "You're alright, kid. Too bad that I can't have someone young like you on my ship." Then Luffy saw that Krieg was going to change his tone and signaled for his crew to duck. Something that the pirates had learned to obey without question. But then again, I hate ISOLENCE, Krieg looked to reveal Golden Woot's steel armor, which is fur-lined like the rest of his attire, consisting of a chest plate, shoulder guards, and elbow guards. His Jolly Roger is painted on the shoulder guards. Under those, he has a brown shirt, and his hands are covered by a pair of fur-lined gloves. But everyone soon ignored all that once Krieg pulled out a pair of double-tubed pistols and some more under his golden armor and shoot at the downed chefs point blank. Shouts of unfairness and disbelief were soon heard throughout the entire restaurant. And while everyone's focus was on both shot sea chefs and Krieg's armor, Luffy made a curious signal that only Nami saw and nodded at. She even gave Luffy a quick kiss on the cheek before sneaking past everyone and through the front exit. And just then, a large white sack fell on the ground right in front of Krieg. And on the other side to him was Zeph. Here, enough food for even 100 sailors. Now take it and get out of here. Things look good. Krieg will take what he really wanted, and with nothing left to deal with a restaurant, he will be on his way. That is until one of the loudmouth chefs had to ruin it. What are you doing, Chef Zeph? He said until Luffy suddenly glared at him. Do you ever shut up, and now Krieg will never leave? He said, and everyone was wondering why until Krieg finally spoke up. Zeph? As in, Redfoot, Zeph? You are still alive? Krieg asked the head chef of the restaurant. I thought you perished in a storm 9 years ago. So what if I am alive? I can't be a sailor anymore now that I have only one leg. But that doesn't matter to me. Zeph said. I am now a chef and I still have my 2 hands, so I can still cook. You're looking at an old man who is nothing like when I was Redfoot. Who is Redfoot? Usopp asked, and Luffy answered. The owner, Usopp. He wasn't always the head chef of the floating restaurant, he used to be a pirate. He started to explain, and everyone gasped at that fact. When he was a pirate, he was the captain and cook of his crew, so he was unique. He never used his hands in combat and instead used his legs to fight. His monstrous strength and skill with his kicks can shatter granite and leave footprints in steel. He was known as Redfoot because of how his legs are usually strained with the blood of his enemies. Everyone was amazed once Luffy finished his story. Who would have thought that the one-legged chef used to be a pirate, and a very well-known one at that? I even heard that after a year in the Grand Line, you came back only to vanish from the seas. Got it all in one package, boy. And now that is all in the past. Zeph said in a stubborn tone that showed some modesty as well as honesty. You forgot to mention one more thing, Straw Hat Boy. Krieg decided to cut in as well. Once you made it back from a year in the Grand Line, you had a notebook. A notebook that contained everything you ever learned, everything you ever used, everything there is to sail on the Grand Line. I need it since I just came from the Grand Line myself, but didn't last more than a week. Now everyone was scared. They were aware of how powerful Krieg and his crew were, but to hear that they failed to last more than a week in the Grand Line. Just how dangerous is the world's greatest ocean? No, Zeph finally broke the ice. That notebook is also everything about me and my old crew. It is a testament to our own strength, and I will keep it until I die. Fool! Krieg burst. I had everything once I entered the Grand Line: power, numbers, tactics. All I didn't have was information, and you are the only man in the East Blue that has it. I need it! Krieg shouted, but Zeph was not budging. Sorry, Krieg. Luffy cut in once again. But when only you still standing and a starving crew behind you, you can't be taken seriously, and neither will be your words. A general without an army to lead is as good as dead. Krieg gritted his teeth and sighed. Fine, Straw Hat Boy. But don't think that you will off the hook for denying me what I want. I will be back, and with an army to lead. Then I will take that notebook even if I have to sink this stinking restaurant to the bottom of the ocean. Krieg then took the sack of food, hung it over his shoulder, left the Baratie via the front door. After a moment of silence, everyone soon turned to Zeph. Now what, boss? You have doomed us all. Wait until every single one of Krieg's pirates finally gets fed? Then we all are dead? Shut up. Zeph sighed in relief that Luffy had silenced his idiotic brand of chefs. Thanks, boy. And you lot should be grateful that Krieg was smart enough not to sink this place with all the food going down. We have been given time to defend ourselves. If you are cowardly enough to jump ship, for all I care. Zeph said to the chefs, and they never budged. Just bring out an oversized eating tool for each one to hold like a spear. They all said that they have no place other than the Baratie, so they are going to defend it. But all that was dashed when Luffy had violently left the table and headed towards to the front door to say, Guys, Zeph. The hawk has arrived to finish off his prey. As soon as those encrypted words were said, the sound of a large mass hitting the water and screams had lured everyone else outside. XXXXX outside the restaurant was the same ruined ship that scared away the customers, but it had a large cut that pretty much sliced it into two. Captain, the ship is listing. One of the sailors that was unfortunately still on the listing ship shouted to Krieg, who was on a safer portion, watching in horror and disbelief. Listing? My flagship galleon. Impossible. Krieg could only watch until his signature ship finally collapsed under all the damage, and now it is garbage floating on the sea around the Baratie. Hey Krieg. The large man turned to see Luffy smirking at him. The sight alone had started to make him angry. You sure were stupid in the Grand Line. You dared to interrupt his nap and now he has followed you all the way back to the East Blue. Thanks a lot. Luffy said in a sarcastic tone that dragged a proverbial dagger through Krieg's chest. What the hell are you talking about? That bastard attacked first and look at the hell he had down to my ships. That was my only own left, Krieg retorted, but Luffy just shook his head in a way to say, whatever. Captain. There he is. That is the man who almost sank us and now he is here in the East Blue with us. Another of the Krieg pirates shouted and pointed into the direction of a boat that was in the shape of a coffin with a single sail, a couple of eerie candles, and then there is the sailor that is on the ship. Zoro. Luffy said to his first mate who was shaking like a leaf. That is the man you claim to beat. I present the greatest swordsman in the world, Dracul Mihawk. Mihawk is a tall, lean man with black hair, a short beard, mustache and sideburns that point upwards. His strangely colored red eyes resembled that of a hawk. He wears black and red ornate clothing with a crucifix pendant which gives him the appearance of a Spanish swordsman. His attire consists of a wide-brimmed black hat decorated with a large plume, and a long, open black coat with no shirt underneath, with red, flower-patterned sleeves and collar. He wears white pants held up by a decorated belt and tucked inside overly large boots in comparison to his leg size. He wears a kogatana around his neck, appearing as a golden cross-shaped necklace, and carries his sword on his back at times he isn't using it. The large sword is a curved black blade in the shape of a crucifix, with a golden handguard decorated by red beads, and a hilt wrapped in bandages, with a particularly big bead at his extremity. Hello Luffy. I thought you will be in the Grand Line by now. Mihawk started to speak in a calm and otherwise bored tone. You know how I take lessons of others to heart and it doesn't hurt to take people with real potential along or they will just be wasted away if they stay in the East Blue. Luffy said in a causal tone that Sai was by all means an actual swordsman, but even other swordsmen are reluctant to be this way with the best in the world. Fine, fine. And who is this approaching me? Mihawk said before he got everyone facing Zoro who seemed to be in a trance of something. My name is Roronoa Zoro and my dream to be the best in the world. And to do that, I ask to challenge you. Zoro said, which caused no only gasps from almost everyone present but the Krieg pirates all recognized Zoro as the pirate hunter and user of the three-sword style. You think you can make yourself look brave by thinking you are the first to challenge me, Frog? I know of a real swordsman, one that I can truly call a rival. And then there is Luffy, he is someone I can actually take seriously. Mihawk said to very blunt. But Mihawk then jumped so fast that he practically teleported from his boat and behind Zoro, much to the horror of the Krieg pirates. I must ask, before I kill you over such rashness, why do you challenge me? It is bravery or foolishness? Neither. It's called ambition and also a promise to a late friend, and I will not die before any of them are fulfilled. Zoro answered while taking out his personal double blades while placing the Wado Ichimonji from his late friend in his mouth. And yet, Mihawk ever even reached for the large sword on his back. Instead, he took what seemed to be a necklace with a cross in the middle. Taking the cross, Mihawk reveled it to be a disguise for an unusually small dagger with the top half as the handle. What's that for? Zoro said in growing frustration. That Mihawk not only wasn't afraid of him like all the previous prey but thought that a blade that small will be all Mihawk needed to fight him. That's Mihawk's kogatana, Luffy said, not caring if anyone heard or not. Sensing that he at least got some attention for that statement, he continued. Mihawk uses it to determine if his next opponent is really all they say. It took me an entire year fighting that thing to even get Mihawk to realize how old it was getting. What do you mean, Luffy? Usopp asked and Luffy smiled. You trained with Mihawk. A smirk was all anyone needed for an answer. That and this. Sure, but the rest is a story for another time. Luffy said and faced the conflict which could only be a one-sided battle. Zoro was now fighting like a madman, enraged at the silent insult Mihawk was showing. That was because Mihawk is so good with blades that he was able to match and overwhelm Zoro with only a pocket knife. When Zoro tried to get serious, he unwillingly let his guard down and was stabbed in the chest with the kogatana. Brother, damn. Johnny and Yosaku were outraged at the sight but suddenly found themselves dizzy and unable to even lift themselves over the railings. Usopp was a little surprised at the sight but only looked at Luffy with the expression on his face, saying everything running through his mind. Meanwhile, Zoro was not even trying to escape, and it was because he treasured his honor over his life. In one twisted way, that is a good way to go. Mihawk was impressed that Zoro realized that the former had missed the latter's heart on purpose. Taking out his biggest blade from his back, that Mihawk called Black Sword Yuru, he charged for Zoro, who was preparing to use his strongest move. However, it was not enough, and Zoro was left with 2 broken swords in his hands and even more damage to his body. But he refused to back down now. Scars on a swordsman's back is his greatest shame. Excellent. That was to be the last word heard until the sound of flesh ripping apart and settled in everyone's ears. And after only a few seconds that felt like an eternity, this cut the silence in half. Zoro was in great pain, and it seemed like the world had suddenly gotten silent and numb. But all this was actually the moment Zoro needed. To see just how strong the world's greatest is. And all this reminded him of just how strong Zoro saw of his captain that made him feel like a little frog in a big ocean. It was back when and where Zoro actually first saw Luffy and also saw just how powerful the raven-haired pirate captain really is. Flashback begins. You, Luffy, no, Straw Hat. They all reacted to Luffy taking in the marine bullets, and yet Luffy didn't get riddled with holes like a piece of Swiss cheese. It will take more than that to kill me. Luffy laughed at everyone's expressions. Just who the hell are you? Everyone shouted while ignoring the armless marines and the pile of rifles at Luffy's feet. And neither did Luffy, who said proud and clear, I am Monkey D. Luffy, and my dream is to be the best pirate of them all. I am going to be the Drunken Pirate King. Drunken Pirate King? What the hell does that mean? Zoro asked, suddenly lost all his shock and was now feeling confused. It means what it means, Zoro. You ought to know that, Luffy said and took out his prize to show to Zoro. You didn't say which sword was yours, so I took them all. Are any of these your sword? They all are. I practice 3 sword style and those are my treasures, Zoro answered, and Luffy nodded. I know that I promised to get your swords, but you can still refuse and die here, or you can live as their enemy, Luffy said while directing the attention to the Navy, who were frozen in shock from all this. You are a real demon. You know that, right? Zoro said, and not caring if he got an answer or not. Oh, I have nothing to lose most anyways. I will do it. I will be a pirate. Then here you go and hurry it up, they are already here. Luffy just extended the 3 swords and showed that the Navy had decided to abandon firearms in favor of swords. Zoro was wondering why Luffy hadn't untied the ropes until old reflexes and kicked in. The ropes were already untied. Zoro didn't care for it anymore and used his 3 swords to block every single blade that was aiming for his neck. Kobe and Alvida were both in shock and awe at the sight while Luffy chuckled. There. I have fought the Navy, so I am an outlaw. I don't care anymore, but I do have a dream. To be the best swordsman in the world. And I will succeed with or without your help. So don't get into my way. I don't intend to, and especially not with men with dreams. There is just so little of us in the world, Luffy said before raising one of his legs. So duck. Zoro was wondering why Kobe and Alvida started to back away. Gomu Gomu no Muchi. Zoro suddenly felt like dropping down, and just in time to avoid Luffy's extended leg, wiping out every marine literally on his back. Just what the hell are you? Zoro managed to shout despite having his Wado Ichimonji still in his mouth. I am a man with many talents and with many powers, Zoro. And I am also the only captain in the world who can kill his crew if they rebel, so don't think about it. Luffy answered with a grin that sent a slight shiver down his spine. Enough. You cowards can't do anything right. I will give you my last order. To all who are of no use to me. The voice of Morgan had settled in everyone's ears once again. Every single marine in this courtyard better prepare to slit their throats once I give the signal, or I will kill you all if you hesitate. That really sent things over the edge, and the poor marines just picked up their swords and placed the tip on the skin of their throats, ready to take their own life due to cowardice. Good one, father, look at me. Luffy and Zoro turned to see something that enraged them but only made Morgan indifferent. There was Helmeppo in all his own cowardly glory, but he was having a couple of hostages, Kobe and Alvida. Helmeppo dared to have a gun at Kobe's temple while having his other hand on one of Alvida's breasts, threatening to rip them off. Don't you move or they both will met their end. They must have been stupid to cross us and follow a selfish idiot like you. You sent them here just to get Zoro all to yourself. Admit it. Luffy didn't say a word but only smirked like a madman, only waved his hand briefly only to settle off a chain of events like the same time. The first thing to happen will be Helmeppo suddenly started to shake and let go of his hostages. Go. Luffy said, and Kobe picked up the pistol and shot Helmeppo in the eye. Now you will never look at the world like you just looked at us and the Marines, Helmeppo. I will be sure of it, Kobe shouted with confidence and bravery that appeared out of nowhere while Helmeppo just struggled with a bleeding right eye. That is until he was knocked out by the bare side of a spiked club by Alvida, who put her hand on Kobe's shoulder with a look of new respect. The second thing that happened was all the swords the Marines were holding had all rusted in mere seconds and lost their edge that they can't even scratch bare human skin. The blades then shattered and crumbled off the handles and onto the ground, completely useless and harmless. And the final thing to happen started with a scream from Morgan. Everyone saw to their disgust that Morgan's metal lower jaw had suddenly started to fall as the surrounding skin and tissue had dissolved completely. Morgan couldn't even speak while trying to stop the bleeding at his mouth and could only grumble and mumble in anger. But he couldn't even get up for some reason, and he couldn't even give orders to his Marines who had appeared before him. He mumbled something like he was trying to call out to them but saw that the Marines were no longer afraid of him. They were angry at him. They started down with hateful looks and with their rifles back in hand. Morgan couldn't lift his axe hand or even scream to save his life while the courtyard was filled with gunfire. This went on for 1 single minute with 5 rounds a second given how low-tech the rifles were. Once the gunfire finally left the air for the remainder of that day, there was only a smoking carcass that had a metal lower jaw and an axe for a right hand. Morgan was done in by the very Marines that feared and thus, secretly hated him. And that will why the life of a captain is always about waiting for the crew to kill you for any reason they find suitable to do so. But Luffy will be a different captain. His crew will fear him, but not in the way Morgan had done. They will fear him for his power to protect them and deal with their enemies rather than abuse and cruel treatment to them from the captain, Luffy himself. Will you really kill us, Captain? Because you can. I will do what everyone thinks is right and you can't deny it. If I need to kill, it will not be you. It will be the evil that dared to use like puppets. And puppets are only freed once the strings are cut. Luffy answered, and I try to cut them until I give up. And I will never give up, not until the end. Zoro never forgot those words that day and he never will. Flashback ends. You were right, Captain. I am not ready to complete my dream. I really am weak compared to the best of the best. Zoro thought as he laid there in his own blood. But I will not give up from here, not until the end. XXXXX. Meanwhile, at the same time as Zoro was sliced terribly. Zoro! Luffy yelled, and as he roared, the grunts of Krieg's crew all fainted while still floating in the water. The other chefs also fell to the might of the strange energy that filled the area with a mile-long radius the least. That will explain all the fish and sharks floating to the surface while foaming at the mouth. Ignoring all that, Luffy still charged at Mihawk, who still had his giant black blade out. When Mihawk tried to block Luffy's attack, it failed and Luffy was suddenly on the other side of Mihawk, and only a few seconds afterwards, a gash on Mihawk's cheek had appeared. What? That kid landed a cut on the world's greatest swordsman. What is going on, Chef Zeph? I have no damn idea, turnips. I never seen this happen before, and I never thought I will live to see Mihawk actually getting cut before. Not since he became the greatest swordsman in the world. Zeph shouted with his calm and controlled expression was actually broken. While everyone around the wreckage were in shock, Luffy's crew were feeling something else. Worry. They have seen this happen before, and it usually means that Luffy's anger has been triggered, and when that happens, people get serious hurt and more serious wounds were soon to happen to them. Johnny and Yosaku suddenly found the strength to get to Zoro and take him away for the wreckage. Meanwhile, Mihawk actually smiled for once and was able to block Luffy's next attack, but the remainder impact force had sent him right into one of the broken masts in the wreckage. No matter how hard Mihawk had tried to push Luffy off of him, the latter had a firm pressing hold on the former, even when he used his remaining hand to grab his saber, as he had his katana out first as a habit. I am not the same as you last saw me, Mihawk, and now you have finally gave me enough reason to show you what I can really do without limits. Luffy said with a voice that only his opponent heard. And I told you that once a mold breaker, always one. Mihawk knew what Luffy's saying and gave one last push with some extra strength than usual in order to try and get some space, but once he did, there was an incredible pain in his shoulder. Luffy had somehow landed a direct hit even on someone as evasive and fast as Mihawk. You truly have grown, so let's see this power that you never used in our matches in days long ago. Mihawk shouted before the two titans with a sword went at it again. Every blow that was matched had caused something no more or less of an explosion. The sound and impact had shattered the battlefield of broken ship wood, even rose and affected the nearby Baratie. Windows shattered, the sea shook all around. It was like a true battle between titans on the face of the earth. Everyone found it hard to follow the patterns and movements of the blades or the swordsmen using them, but they saw that they were pretty much even, giving each other the equal amount of cuts and bruises. But someone didn't appreciate the honor and dignity to leave this duel the way it is. Krieg. Luffy said in a deadpan tone that Mihawk had matched. The situation has turned sour by the large man. I thought you would have fled by now. I am Don Krieg. I will not be seen as a coward by fleeing from who dares try to follow me. Krieg, there is a thin line between bravery and foolishness. But no one will notice the character of coward on your list of bad features. It is just under dishonest, cruel, vile, and finally, pathetic. Pathetic. Why you? Krieg tried to charge for Luffy but was intercepted by a slash that had left a mark on the piece of wood both they were standing. Hey, that's my ship. Was you ship Krieg, and if you are the cunning, backstabbing and scheming cheater you are, you will know not to cross that line. Luffy said before making his way with his saber in hand while his katana back in its scabbard. Like a little boy with a straw hat is going to scare me, now Krieg, of course, never listened more out of pride and indeed foolish bravery and crossed the line anyway. But once he set his first foot on the other side, he kneed down in unknown pain that caused him to choke in blood. Krieg tried to speak, but the blood clogging up his throat and mouth made it nigh impossible. The strength throughout his entire body had left in an instant, like when Krieg was on the brink of starvation. What the hell is this? I never felt so much pain in my bones, and my skin feels like it is trying to keep in lava. Krieg thought until he heard the very last voice he ever wanted to. Do you remember that bottle of wine I gave you when you first arrived at the Baratie? Luffy said. I wasn't lying. I made that wine and that bottle myself. And I never give it except to those I wish to kill in the next 24 hours. And that is because I can easily use my powers to poison you, Krieg. Everyone gasped in disbelief, shock and horror. This kid actually tricked Krieg into digesting poison. Just what is wrong with this boy? All they can do is ask themselves that once they even stand on his knees anymore, and fell to the deck with his face contorted in pain and something he claimed to lack, fear. And if that wasn't ugly enough, the eyes and mouth were leaking tears of foam that caused something of an acidic reaction with the deck wood. And then, nothing happened. No one moved. No one spoke. It was like no one was able to breathe. That is until coughing was heard and water leaving one's mouth had followed. It was Zoro, and he finally came to after that near-death experience that sent Luffy over the edge for only a few minutes. Zoro, big brother, cough cough, I didn't kill your first mate Luffy. I merely tested him, and since he proved to be better than the insects that come and go, I spared him. Mihawk said and faced the direction of Zoro after placing his Yuru back into its holder on the former's back. He then announced to Zoro that he will waiting for the latter to come and take his title. And you should look for Zoro, Luffy. Because if he dies before taking my throne, then I will hunt you down and kill you. Understand? Yes, master. Luffy, but Mihawk just chuckled. Something as rare as a blue moon for the all-serious and stern Mihawk. You have no reason left to call me that, Luffy. I really have nothing left to teach you about. And I know you will not abuse my teachings, so see the world, make more friends and do what only Roger was able to do. That was to be the last of Hawkeye Mihawk for the remainder of the day and pretty much the whole year. Unless Luffy has anything to say about it. XXXXX later, it was then a hassle to ship out the scrap wood from Krieg's old ship. And what is more is to handle the corpse. The chefs found out that they could cover up even half a year's worth in costs and bills if they turned in Krieg for his bounty. As for the rest of his crew, they were all piled into a rowboat and told to never go near the Baratie ever again. With one exemption, of course. Jin, despite being called the man-demon, never wanted any of this to happen and foolishly mixed his feelings of being in debt with his loyalty to Krieg and the Krieg pirates. But it helped when one of the Krieg pirates, a large man named Pearl, tried to protest and even become the next captain. Jin put a cork in it and Pearl out of business for good, despite the fact that Pearl never lost even a pint of blood in all of his battles or get a scratch on the various shields on his body. Because of that and Luffy taking an interest in Jin, the staff at the Baratie reluctantly let Jin off the hook unless Luffy will take responsibility. Not even hesitating, Luffy agreed and Jin burst into tears at how a young man had shown him more kindness than everyone else in his life combined. But while everyone was taking a Jin on rowboat to go after Nami, who had supposedly stolen the king's gourd, Luffy couldn't leave yet. There is still the need for one very important crew member, one that no crew should be without. You said that you need a cook on your crew, right? Luffy and Yosaku turned to Sanji, who was leaning on one of the walls, taking another smoke like usual, and yet they both knew that those words came from his mouth. I do, but I can't afford to have an indecisive person in my crew and working in my ship. What made you change your mind? Luffy was excited to hear the one he chose finally wanting to join, but if he just said yes, it will only make him sound desperate. Desperate was a word that Luffy will rather die than to hear someone call him that. Because I have a dream, Sanji said and got Luffy's attention. My dream is to find the all blue where all four of the blue seas meet. Where every single ingredient in the world are in one place. Paradise for a sea cook like myself. Sanji finally admitted and expected to hear at least some laughter. Silence was all he heard instead. But Sanji just couldn't wait for a response either, and I have learned everything there is to cooking and the old man's fighting style. I am sure to be able to handle whatever will happen if I join you. Is that good enough, Captain? Luffy was silent, trying to spot any deception in that tone. There was none. That is when Luffy smiled and patted Sanji on the shoulder. Then you are in, Sanji. And I promise you that once we are done sailing the Grand Line, that dream will just be around the corner. Because by then, you will a chef worthy to cook up anything that can be found in the all blue. Thank you, Captain, Sanji said before he started to show tears down his cheeks. Thank you. Sanji then left, saying that he needed to pack up, but it was also to hide his tears while within his room. Tears that he was finally leaving the restaurant and that he was given a chance to try at his dream. Dreams, that is what truly pirates are for. To seek adventure and see the world as they can before their untimely ends. Whatever dreams were completed or not, pirates don't die screaming or crying but laughing at all the fun they had before they die.